How could a daughter of a noble family be so ugly? No one knew she wasn't actually from this world, but a makeup artist for a famous actress. After a life-altering incident, she found herself transmigrated as the tragic heroine of a novel. At her coming-of-age ceremony, she was pushed and humiliated in front of the nobles and the king. She vowed to get her revenge. How will she embark on her journey to become a stunning beauty, capturing the hearts of countless men? Stay tuned. At a grand banquet, noble ladies looked at the girl who had just entered with judgmental eyes, their whispers incessant. However, the protagonist, Dionjo, only focused on the food on the table, contemplating what to eat first. Perhaps the softest dish? After a moment of hesitation, she decided to pick up a plate of pastries. "All right, let's start with the strawberry cake," she said, then proceeded to eat it piece by piece with a fork. Indeed, it was both soft and delicious, she exclaimed after finishing it. Then she noticed something else. "Shouldn't I try the egg tarts too?" She indulged in all the delicious food available. The noble ladies, witnessing this scene, couldn't help but look down on her. How dare she come to the ball dressed like that? Should we stop her? How could she be so ugly? Although she didn't look at them, she could still hear the familiar stares and whispers. They only judge others. Such a disgrace to the nobility, she thought. Their disdain was palpable. Wiping her mouth, she thought, these nobles. She smiled, as if she didn't care about anything. Feeling proud of herself, she thought, "You're such a great girl, Jodie Cho." She complimented herself smugly, preparing to leave. "Great, I succeeded again today. Time to go back." With that, she strode away confidently. A girl had been watching her quietly, filled with disdain, wondering how she could be so shameless. Watching Dionjo's departing figure, she thought, how can she be so confident? After leaving, Dionjo carefully pushed open a door. Sitting in the quiet garden, she slowly opened a small pouch. Then she called out, "Comb." The magic pouch instantly conjured a beautiful comb for her. She gently let down her long hair and then neatly combed it. She found it quite amusing. The protagonist's halo was indeed powerful. Then she sighed. Today was truly tiring. She recalled those judgmental gazes. The nobles kept pointing and gossiping. She stared into the distance pensively for a while. Inside the luxurious and magnificent mansion, someone greeted her with a smile as soon as she entered. "You're back." Dionjo replied coldly, "Yeah, I'm back. Are you blind? Can't you see?" She said this, but felt helpless inside. "Miss, everyone thought you had already become a baroness." Then she stormed off, bumping shoulders hard as she passed. Now she was clearly annoyed. "Hey, if you're not pretty, at least have a good personality." Dionjo's footsteps stopped on the stairs. She was truly angry, but she tried to calm herself down. No, she had to stay calm. "Lila." Then she wearily went upstairs, stretching her muscles. She was a little worried. Perhaps she would go complain to Louis right away. After all, they were dating, and her cousin, Louis, was a baron. So she had to be harsher to Becky. That way, both Louis and the servants would have a bad impression of her, which was precisely Dionjo's intention. She marveled at her perfect plan. "Well done, Joe Dionjo. Time was running out. I'll go take a bath first. I feel so frustrated." Her real name was Jodie Cho, and she was the makeup artist for the famous actress, Kingila. Back then, she would seize every opportunity to scold her. "Why are you so slow? Hurry up." And Joe could only endure it silently. Doing Kingila's makeup was indeed a good opportunity, but also a tough job, and having to endure the insults and sarcasm. "Jodie Cho, you only took this job to seduce the male lead, right? Unbelievable. I hate two-faced people like you the most." Even those insignificant comments, I couldn't refute. "Isn't this your way of getting attention?" One time, she and Kingila accidentally fell on the street. Kingila, panicked upon seeing an approaching car, clung tightly to her. Then she used Joe as a shield, and in the end, the reason Joe lost her life was also because of Kingila. Death appeared before her, saying, "I'm sorry, I mistakenly brought you here. As compensation, I'll help you become the female lead." After he finished speaking, she was transported into another body. She took on the role of Lila Violet, the protagonist of the novel Caged Bird, also known as the bird who's only happy in a cage. Caged Bird had 3 male leads: Prince Theobat Vassum Ivorinia, Duke Hendrik of Frederick and Marquis Alfonso Rubinier. In the novel, Lila was kidnapped and imprisoned by the three leads, and in the end, she consumed a pill given by the prince and became a fool. Dionjo was extremely dissatisfied, saying, "If it's a tragic ending, just call it tragic ending. What's a happy tragic ending?" To avoid the original plot, she made herself appear so unremarkable that no one would pay attention to her. Everyone criticized her, wondering how a daughter of a noble family could look like that. She also displayed a terrible temper to isolate herself. It wasn't difficult. She just had to think of Kinjila's attitude. With her exceptional makeup skills, she made herself look extremely unattractive. There was no way she would meet a tragic fate like Lila. Dionjo looked at herself in the mirror, the female lead being imprisoned by three male leads. The reason such an absurd and crazy situation happened was because of a special rule in the novel Caged Bird. Dionjo took a hairdryer out of her bag. She paused, thinking premarital training. It's because of that rule that things are so difficult. She complained as she dried her hair. Premarital training was a special law in the Bisham Empire. In this empire that valued romantic values, couples in political marriages had to live together in the groom's house for a year for a compatibility test. It was because of this law that those three men recklessly imprisoned Lila. The entire process was extremely cruel and shameless. Why? Because it was an adult novel. Dionjo got goosebumps after reading the content. It's so disgusting. I'll never let that happen to me. I've worked so hard. Can I do what I want? It's all because of that death. If only he had put me in a normal romantic comedy novel. She was frustrated, but oh well. Thankfully, you gave me that bag 9 years ago in the mansion. Back then, I was still baby Lila. I never thought I'd become a character in a novel. But why this female lead with a miserable life? If my life ends as a lunatic, what's the point? She screamed helplessly, "Death, you're a devil. You just threw me here. It's so unfair. What am I supposed to do now?" Suddenly, Death appeared, saying, "I was wondering who was crying so loudly." Dionjo stopped crying and listened to him. "I'm here to reconcile with you. I'll let you bring one thing you want into this world, but it has to belong to you." She replied discontentedly, "Just one thing? Why is it so difficult?" Hearing this, he quickly turned around, "Then forget it." She immediately stopped him. "Wait, no, I know what I want." She said sincerely, "Bring my makeup bag." He asked, "Do you have a small bag or something?" She started searching. "Hold on." Then she took out a ribbon bag. "How about this?" He agreed and immediately brought her all the makeup. Everything was placed in that small bag. She looked at the bag in her hand in surprise, then heard him say, "This is all I can do. Don't call me again. I'm really busy." After he left, she lay on the bed in frustration. "He just threw me here and disappeared." But the coming-of-age ceremony is coming soon. According to the original plot, Lila was really looking forward to it. So I have to find a way to safely navigate this hurdle. Dionjo tried to comfort herself. "I'll be fine, because I've already endured so much insult and cursing." She frowned, placing a hand on her forehead. "If God really exists, please let me escape the original storyline." The next morning, in the mansion, Becky knocked softly. "Miss, it's Becky." Hearing the words "come in," Becky responded, "You're up early today." Suddenly she frowned. "But are you washed up?" Dionjo grumbled, "Of course I am." She thought to herself, perhaps she could truly make herself look ugly. Her makeup skills could even overshadow the protagonist's halo. She couldn't help but praise herself. Seeing Becky enter, she thought, "Why is she coming at this hour? Just say what you need to and leave." Dionjo sighed wearily. Becky, with a displeased expression, glanced at her and said, "I'm here to inform you that the Baron wants you downstairs for breakfast. Please come to the dining room." She was about to leave, but turned back. "Remember to act like a noble. Do you know how much the Baron has done for you? You should be ashamed in front of the Baron." Dionjo was a bit surprised, then found herself in an awkward position. She abruptly stood up. "What? Who should be ashamed? Doesn't she know she ate even more than me yesterday? I have my reasons, but why did he do that?" She angrily walked down the stairs. "Everyone in this house, just wait and see. Once I'm free from that damn plot, I'll leave immediately." Despite her displeasure, she still had to go to the dining room. "Good morning, brother." The Baron grumbled, "I told you not to be late." He frowned as he ate. "You're only coming down now." Honestly, with disdain, she pulled out a chair and sat down. He continued to complain. Suddenly, he furrowed his brows. "Why are you wearing a dress today?" She retorted, "What's wrong with my dress? I wear it because I think it looks good." He couldn't believe his ears. "Is there something wrong with your taste? You call that strange feathered dress beautiful." She laughed. How strange. I'm curious about my dear sister's standards of beauty. The two glared at each other. He laughed helplessly. It doesn't matter what you think, but you have to look somewhat presentable at the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony. Even someone like you will eventually have to get married. Hearing this, Deonjo froze. She thought, trembling, is he doing this because of my wish? I do want to date and get married too. Unhappy, she stood up to leave. I'm going back to my room. He scoffed. At least you know shame. But an insult was an insult. Deonjo stormed back to her room, fuming. She clenched her fists. Shame? How dare he say that? She thought angrily. Just you wait, brother. Because this little bit of shame is far better than what you'll see at the coming-of-age ceremony. That day, Deonjo wore the ugliest dress imaginable. The maids whispered amongst themselves. Oh my, what an absurd dress. Looking at herself in the mirror, she laughed, wondering if it exuded power. Of course it did, even more so. It was utterly repulsive, just as she'd hoped. She lifted her skirt and stepped into the carriage. At the coming-of-age ceremony, the royal family would hold a ritual for the noble children. According to the original plot, at this ritual, Lilla's fate would become intertwined with the male leads, all thanks to Charlotte's jealousy. The villainess would start causing trouble today. She harbored a deep hatred for Lilla, and this was the beginning of her dark future. She sighed, grateful for the diary. Thanks to this, and its perfect size for my makeup pouch, I have to review today's events. She tried to reassure herself. Everything will be all right, because I've read it so many times. She clenched her fists. Finally, the carriage stopped in front of a magnificent building. She paused, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach, before finally summoning the courage to step out. Enduring humiliation for a brighter future was a small price to pay. There was no need for shame. She wasn't the protagonist. She had prepared for this day for 9 years. Today, the story would deviate from the original script. As she walked through the grand entrance, the nobles gasped. Whispers rippled through the crowd, each one a judgment. Has she lost her mind? How dare she dress like that? It's outrageous, utterly improper. Why didn't anyone stop her? Hearing their words, Deonjo thought, this is precisely the reaction I wanted. Suddenly, a figure appeared before her. The whispers intensified. Isn't that the dress from Raphael's that Lady Charlotte was wearing? She looked breathtakingly beautiful. I thought they said it wasn't for sale, someone murmured in awe. It's truly stunning. Seeing her, a flicker of nervousness ran through Deonjo. It was Charlotte. This meant it was about to begin. Just then, a loud voice called for everyone's attention, announcing the arrival of the king, the queen, and the prince. It was Prince Theobat. Even Duke Hendrik was present. And finally, Marquis Alfonso, the three male leads of the story. Once the king was settled, he commanded, begin. A man holding a scroll began to read. The coming-of-age ceremony shall now commence. First, the daughter of Count Penotely, Charlotte Penotely, please step forward. She stepped forward and curtsied. I pay my respects to the king and queen. The king spoke. Congratulations on your coming of age. I hope you will contribute greatly to this kingdom in the future. She bowed in response. Thank you, your majesty. I will serve the Basham Empire with all my heart. At that moment, Prince Theobat seemed to take an interest in her. After completing her part, she passed by Deonjo. A wistful thought crossed Deonjo's mind. Honestly, I'm a little jealous. If this weren't such a gloomy and dark novel, I could showcase all my skills. And perhaps, when I meet my true love, none of this will matter. Just then, the man with the scroll continued to announce names, finally calling, the Baron's daughter, Miss Lilla Violet, please step forward. She was startled, then stepped forward and curtsied. I pay my respects to the king and queen, she said. Seeing her appearance, the king couldn't help but frown. His brow furrowed as he offered a strained congratulation. Lilla Violet, congratulations on your coming of age. She bowed. Thank you, your majesty. Deonjo kept encouraging herself internally. It's almost over. If I fall, just like in the story, lost in thought, she was suddenly and forcefully shoved from behind. Deonjo lost her balance, falling hard to the ground with a cry of pain. She winced, fear mixing with the throbbing ache, wondering who had pushed her. In that moment, she became the laughingstock of the coming-of-age ceremony. People began to mock her, saying she was already ugly, and now she walked like a duck, their taunts echoing around her. Tears welled in Deonjo's eyes. She saw Alfonso talking to a girl, then Hendrik discussing something with some nobles, and then Theobat dancing with Charlotte. Dejected, she walked away. Good, no one's interested in me. She tried to hold her head high. I did well, this isn't a problem anymore. But this is still so humiliating. Dionjo fought back tears as she walked. She reached up to wipe her tears when suddenly someone called out the name Lila Violet. Startled, she turned around. It was Charlotte and her friends. Suddenly, Charlotte frowned and coughed. Her friend beside her immediately asked with concern, "What's wrong, Charlotte?" She laughed. "Thank you, Monica. I was just startled by what I saw. It's truly unbearable to look at." Monica quickly agreed. "Indeed, how can someone be so ugly? Is she really a nobleman's daughter?" Just as Lila felt a wave of embarrassment and confusion wash over her, someone approached and said, "So you're here." She froze. "Duke Hendrik and Marquis Alfonso Smaid. Here I am, Charlotte. But what are these two lovely ladies doing here?" Panic clawed at Dionjo. "No, I wasn't supposed to meet them at the coming-of-age ceremony." She stammered, "I apologize. Please excuse me." With that, she fled. Alfonso approached Charlotte, his gaze lingering on Dionjo's retreating figure. Was that her? She was so adorable as child. Watching Dionjo's pathetic escape, Charlotte smiled, a smug satisfaction blooming within her. Meanwhile, Dionjo rushed outside, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had to get home now. The main events were almost over. As she hurried away, another figure emerged. They collided. Dionjo stumbled, falling to the ground. She looked up. "What in the—" She stared at the young man before her. His voice, laced with displeasure, cut through the air. "Your eyesight isn't very good, is it?" It was Prince Theobat. He looked down at her with a distinct frown. Trembling, she scrambled to her feet and curtsied. "Your Highness." The words of respect were automatic, but her mind screamed, "No, I tried so hard to avoid this. Why am I encountering the male leads like this?" She bowed again, desperate to escape. "Please forgive me." She slipped away, leaving Prince Theobat staring after her. He thought, was that the ugly girl? I'd heard the rumors, but they must have been exaggerated. Someone like that is certainly not fit for royalty, even if she does have royal blood. He turned and walked back into the hall. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "Your Highness, what are you thinking about?" It was Charlotte, flanked by the other two male leads. "She truly is beautiful." He offered a non-committal smile, but inwardly he mused, "Yes, this is what royalty should look like." He narrowed his eyes, a flicker of something unsettling stirring within him. He recalled Dionjo's hurried retreat. That girl, there was a sweetness to her scent that didn't match her appearance. Back at the Violet Mansion, hurried footsteps echoed through the halls. Lewis threw open the door, his voice thick with anger. "Lila Violet, what trouble did you cause yesterday?" Dionjo stirred groggily, pulling herself up in bed. She had cried herself to sleep, her eyes swollen and puffy. He turned to face her fully. "Lewis." He stalked towards her, his fury palpable. "I've put up with you far longer than I should have." Dionjo thought wearily. Here we go again. He continued his tirade. "It's only because of your father's request that I've tolerated you. But now, I can no longer ignore it." She thought bitterly. He says it's because of my father, but he was practically gleeful when he heard about father's death. She had been informed that her father had died in a carriage accident. From now on, her cousin would manage the Baron's estate, a man known only for his extravagant spending and pleasure-seeking. What exactly has he been putting up with, she wondered. Just then, he added, "I had intended to marry Becky once you were wed, but the way you are now, you'll never leave this place. Starting tomorrow, I'll be sending out marriage proposals to suitable families." Dionjo's eyes widened in alarm. She opened her mouth to plead with him, but he cut her off. "If any family agrees to take you, I'll let you know. Until then, I won't be providing you with anything. So don't wander around. Just stay in your room." With that, he turned and left. Becky leaned against the wall, a sneer twisting her lips. Then she spoke, her voice dripping with disdain. "I told you so. You should be careful. You know my relationship with the Baron, so I suppose I don't need to hide it anymore. You should listen to your brother, Mississippi." She chuckled, hiding her smile behind her fan, and then turned to leave. Dionjo sat there, stunned. How had things gotten this bad? She gripped the bed sheets, her knuckles white. "Hold on, it'll all be okay. Lila, who will be the one to reveal her true colors?" Dionjo walked over to the mirror, staring at her reflection. "The plan's a bit messy, but it's all right. For the next year, I just need to endure until I can take control of the main plot." Lost in thought, she crossed the room and flung open the window. She looked out, trying to soothe her frayed nerves. Just a little more effort, Lilla. I don't know how much time has passed. It's been months since I was forbidden to leave the house. The seasons have changed without me even noticing. Nothing much has happened, other than enduring Lewis and Becky. I expected it, but it's still uncomfortable. She frowned at the embroidery in her hands, then slammed her fist down in frustration. Even he started to take out his anger on me. Despair edged her voice. Why is this happening? It's been 10 months and still no marriage proposals. Just then, a knock echoed at the door. A maid entered. Miss, the Baroness summons you. Dionjo replied simply, I understand. The sight of a new maid sparked a memory. Oh, right, Becky isn't a maid here anymore. So her role has become tormenting me. Every day, it's the same nagging. Miss only spends money. Miss is useless. No one wants to marry her. Lately, I've wanted to use that bag more often, but the clasp is so painful that I have to hide it in my skirt every day. She followed the maid. Upon arriving, the maid bowed. Master, Miss has arrived. Lewis burst into laughter. Excellent. My dear sister Lilla, come here quickly. A shiver ran down Dionjo's spine. What's gotten into him today? Seeing her hesitation, he said, Don't just stand there. Sit down. Finally, someone has proposed to you. Dionjo stared at him, stunned. Lewis continued, Do you know Duke Montefiore? The ruler of the northern lands, who also holds vast territories within the kingdom. More importantly, Lilla, you two are a perfect match, especially someone like you. Duke Montefiore isn't even allowed to attend royal gatherings because he's so ugly. If the two of you get together, you'll certainly be an unsightly couple. He finished with another burst of laughter. Dionjo glared at him in disgust. How dare the Baron speak of a duke with royal blood in such a way? Regardless, what could she expect from Duke Montefiore, a name that had never been mentioned in the original plot? Thank goodness he's not one of the 3 male leads. Suddenly, Lewis spoke again. You don't have to do anything. You're leaving tomorrow. Dionjo gasped. What do you mean, tomorrow? That's too soon. He snapped back, his voice laced with anger. How dare you say that? If they change their mind because of our delay, can you take responsibility? I'm tired of seeing you lazing around the house. If you want to avenge Baron Ed, then pack your things and get out, he shouted, pointing a finger at her face. The next day, her luggage was packed. She stood before an unfamiliar gate. This can't be happening. Why are they sending me to a stranger's house? This is so strange, she thought. It would be fine if they had a good reason to kick me out, but what if he's a difficult person to get along with? Stepping inside, she looked around in confusion. The man addressed her gently. The long journey must have been tiring. He spoke softly. I'm the head of the Montefiore family. Dionjo's mind screamed. This person is supposed to be ugly? What? How could they call someone like this ugly? He has a stunningly handsome appearance, positively radiant. Doubting her own eyes, she leaned in for a closer look. He couldn't help but ask, Is something the matter? Snapping out of her trance, she gave a quick, embarrassed smile. Oh, it's nothing. Inwardly, she thought, I stare because he's totally my type. Is it because the freckles under his eyes don't meet royal beauty standards? But that perfect facial symmetry and sleek hair, I have a bad feeling about this. He must have a cold personality. She pondered gloomily. Suddenly, he spoke. I recall having a carriage prepared. It seems you didn't receive the message. She stared, somewhat dazed. So that Lewis deliberately made me take that dilapidated carriage to humiliate me. In the end, he doesn't care about me at all. A sting of hurt pierced through Dionjo's carefully constructed composure. Montefiore observed her shifting expression. You look tired. Rest for now. We could talk tomorrow. Just as he turned to leave, Dionjo called out, No, we should finish this conversation now. I'm Fine. Where should we discuss this? He looked slightly surprised, but acquiesced. Vincent, he called, summoning his servant. The butler collected her luggage. I'll take this to your room, Mississippi. Dionjo, slightly flustered, replied, Yes, thank you. Watching him retreat, she mused, He's been polite from the start, but why so aloof? And it's strange for a duke like him to propose to a baron's daughter like me. There must be a reason behind this. After everything that's happened, I can't get involved in anything dangerous right now. I need to figure this out quickly. When they reached a suitable room, he spoke first. I imagine you must be curious why I extended a marriage proposal to a woman I've never met. He took a sip of tea. There are 2 reasons for my proposal. Dionjo felt a prickle of tension. He continued, First, the persistent rumors surrounding me. Second, royal intervention. Her eyes widened. The royal family? He nodded. Yes. After my elder brother, the former duke, passed away, his wife became the Duchess Dowager. Her Majesty wishes for the Montefiore line, which carries royal blood, to continue to thrive. She desires a wife for me, a mistress for this house. Dianjo nodded slowly, absorbing the information. I understand. Then, unable to contain her curiosity, she asked, and the rumors? He stiffened. She tilted her head, watching as he seemed to struggle for words. Finally, he said, the rumors began because I've never courted anyone. They speculate that I'm impotent. Dianjo's eyes widened. He turned away, a flush creeping up his neck. That's the gist of it. Discomfort rippled through her as well. Oh my, that's rather unexpected. He continued, I don't know if you're aware, but I have a nephew. A nephew? She echoed, surprised. He explained, the boy is my deceased brother's son. He's the rightful heir, but he's too young. I intend for him to be my successor. Therefore, aside from marriage, you will also have to fulfill your duties as a wife. That is why I chose you, because you will never fall in love with me, and vice versa. He frowned, each word carefully enunciated. I do not need love. Dianjo was taken aback by his bluntness. He quickly continued, if you know your place after we are officially married, I will give you a portion of the inheritance. That is my only condition. Now, tell me yours. She hesitated. My condition is... She looked at his impassive face, then began to speak. A short while later, she was led to a room. The future Duchess's room. The butler escorted her there, and then took his leave. Well then, good night, Mississippi. Dianjo gaped as she stepped inside. This is insane, she murmured. Gazing around the opulent chamber, she thought, as expected of a duke's estate. I've never seen such a magnificent room. Perhaps staying here for a year might actually be a good thing. She recalled the moment she'd stated her condition. After we are officially married, he had interrupted her then. What do you mean? She had explained, haltingly. Of course, I'm not asking you to kill me, but I want to disappear from this kingdom. He had replied calmly. So you desire a new identity. That's not difficult. However, if you wish to flee the country, I'm afraid I can only offer limited assistance. Is that acceptable? Dianjo had responded eagerly. That's perfectly fine. A new identity is more than enough. She had added with a small smile. Then you won't have to worry about the rumors anymore. I've been the subject of gossip myself. He had fallen silent for a long moment. Then, his brow furrowed. It seems the future Duchess doesn't care about rumors. Her? Me? Dianjo was startled. She tried to probe further, but he'd simply said, it's nothing. Those are your only conditions. Then he'd added, I will set a deadline to ensure you don't miss anything. Throughout their honeymoon period, he continued to make his arrangements. Back in the present, Dianjo soaked in the bath, thinking, I've waited 10 years. I can endure one more. Even dukes need time to secretly despise people, she mused, stepping out and toweling her hair dry. After the deadline, there are only 2 months left until May. Since things have turned out this way, I might as well enjoy my year here. The next day, in the luxurious villa, she styled her hair in her usual twin buns, then confronted the appallingly disfigured face in the mirror. Good job, she muttered to herself, heading downstairs. Perfect, though perhaps a bit much. The Duke invites you to dine downstairs, miss, Vincent announced. At his words, she descended immediately. As she walked, something caught her eye. A timid young boy was hiding behind a wall. Is that a child? She wondered, approaching and bending down. Hello. The startled boy stared back at her, wide-eyed. Looking closer, Dianjo realized the boy was the spitting image of Duke Montefiore. Is this the nephew he mentioned yesterday? He looks like an angel, she thought admiringly. Then, unexpectedly, the boy yelled, What are you looking at, you ugly hag? The smile froze on Dianjo's face. She sincerely wanted to retract that compliment. He looked more like a little devil. Later, Lucas Montefiore, young Master Michael, and Dianjo were partaking in a lavish and delicious meal. Lucas lifted his ornate wine glass for a sip. Young Master Michael, meanwhile, seemed to be struggling with his cutlery. Dianjo, awkwardly attempting to eat, was unsure what to say. Everyone focused on their meal, not speaking to one another. The atmosphere was stifling. Compared to Louis's boisterous dining habits, this is heaven, Dianjo thought. But are they really going to eat in silence all night? Lucas, picking up his wine glass without drinking, addressed his nephew sternly. Michael, have you greeted her? Dianjo turned to look at the nephew as Lucas admonished. If you haven't greeted her yet, do it now. Michael, ignoring his uncle's prompting, stubbornly refused, determined to remain silent. Turning away from Dianjo, he mumbled a half-hearted greeting. Dianjo, taken aback, gave an awkward laugh. She masked it with a smile, but inwardly she thought, it seems my first impression was quite bad. She recalled her past interactions with children. It wasn't the first time she'd been disliked by a child, it seemed. Suddenly, she was startled by the clatter of something falling. Young Master Michael had dropped his cutlery from the table. A maid, witnessing this, quickly fetched him another set. Dionjo now understood. She smiled, thinking, I thought he was just being mean, but he's still a child after all. She cut a piece of steak and ate. Meanwhile, Michael continued to struggle with his cutlery, his hands fumbling. His face was a mask of intense concentration and determination. Then once again, he dropped his cutlery. The maid brought him another set. Dionjo was puzzled. Is something wrong? Why did he drop them twice? Michael, by now, was deeply embarrassed and ashamed. He hesitated, afraid to take the new cutlery from the servant. Michael's expression darkened, showing visible signs of fear and extreme anxiety. He couldn't understand why the servants were whispering and gossiping in the corners. Dionjo, worried, suspected that perhaps the boy had some unspoken difficulty. Suddenly, she called for the butler, Vincent. Leaning in, she whispered, I need to ask you a favor. Vincent, the butler, upon hearing her request, broke into a pleased smile. I'll prepare it right away, Mississippi. He immediately directed a maid to fetch something from the kitchen. Lucas, observing this exchange, looked thoroughly perplexed. Vincent returned with an aromatic plate of steak. I've prepared another dish as you requested, Mississippi. Dionjo picked up her knife and fork, a glint of purpose in her eyes. The maid, bewildered, watched with open curiosity. With surprising speed and dexterity, Dionjo sliced the steak into bite-sized pieces. The maid, stunned, could only stare. Once finished, Dionjo handed the plate to Vincent. Could you give this to the young master? She added thoughtfully, the cutlery he's using is too heavy. Please have it replaced with something lighter from now on. Lucas, watching this unfold, began to see her in a new light, a flicker of approval in his gaze. Young Master Michael, using his fork, ate each piece Dionjo had cut, a look of quiet satisfaction on his face. Dionjo, watching him eat, felt a surge of warmth. Dionjo felt a deep well of sympathy and protectiveness for the young boy. She understood, more than anyone, the sting of being scrutinized and whispered about. It was something she'd endured constantly in these circles of wealthy nobles. Perhaps, she mused, the former Lila would never have imagined such a scenario. Lucas, too, had possessed clear eyes in his youth, but his were clouded with fear. Back then, Lila, ever the performer, had laughed and chatted, feigning cheerfulness. But as she looked at him now, a sense of bewilderment washed over her. He had always been timid, afraid. Lila had been volatile. The original Lila, it had to be said, was exceptionally cruel. To be met with those disdainful gazes, the looks that saw only something to be discarded for him. It must have been like the prince staring at the siblings and insulting their appearance all over again. How difficult it must have been, Dionjo thought, for a child to endure that alone. Lucas, meanwhile, kept glancing their way, suspicion warring with surprise at her drastic change in behavior. He rose abruptly from the table and retreated to his room. Alone, Lucas couldn't stop thinking, his expression a mixture of worry and unanswered questions. The more I think about it, the more my head hurts. I'm going crazy, he thought. She seems like a completely different person. If it hadn't been like that, perhaps things would be different now. He recalled that day in his childhood, the shame and embarrassment that had kept his head bowed. If it hadn't been like that, but somehow, I can't forget that breath that touched my heart. Could this truly be the same ugly daughter of the Baron from all those years ago? Lucas had once instructed Vincent to deliver a marriage proposal to Lila. The butler had been astonished, shocked even, but duty had compelled him to obey. Lucas, it turned out, had wanted to witness and experience that feeling again. Suddenly, he stopped, startled by his own train of thought. What am I thinking? He frowned, his mind fixated on Lila, unaware that Lila was now Dionjo. Yes, her face, her eyes, her demeanor were all vastly different, as if she were another person entirely. Perhaps her perspective had changed as well. Enough, he admonished himself. He had told her love wasn't necessary. Lucas sat back, sighing in frustration. It was all because of that. Even if offended, one had to report to the royal family. This damned romanticism, it was all because of that royal bloodline. The blood of the wolf god, Rupert, flowed through his veins and the royal family. Well, the history of the Basham Empire began with the wolf god, Rupert, falling in love with a woman. Wolves, by nature, mated for life. Rupert, too, was a god who loved only one. And so, the Basham Empire, worshipping the wolf god Rupert, was a place that prized romance and love above all else. However, with the implementation of the political marriage law, romantic relationships among the nobility had completely shifted. In this kingdom of patience, marriage and family gradually became tools serving mutual benefit, while lovers became the capacity to engage in romantic relationships. It was like that with my parents and older brother, Lucas recalled. Even after this son was born, my parents were busy showering affection on their lovers, and my brother abandoned Michael to be with his lover. Then he died in a carriage accident. If they loved their lovers so much, why didn't they just marry them? Lucas questioned himself. How could they watch the person they loved marry someone else? What was the real nature of these political games? Damned romance. Lucas spat, his voice filled with disgust. The scene shifted to the Grand Palace. Vincent, the butler, came to discuss work with Dianjo. As he poured tea, he said, "I've added the clauses we discussed to the contract. Please check it first. If there's anything you don't like, we can amend it." Dianjo picked up the contract, her face etched with concentration. She read through it carefully, nodding thoughtfully. "So this will become my new identity?" The contract stated that in a country with special policies for artists, a girl named Dianjo suddenly appeared. She was once a member of a low-ranking noble family, but now she was a free-spirited woman, wandering around, finally settling here due to her love for art. Lucas sipped his tea, asking Dianjo if there was anything else she wanted to change. Before he could finish his sentence, Dianjo quickly shook her head. "No," she said, "there's no need to change anything." A bright smile bloomed on Dianjo's face. "I'm truly very satisfied with this agreement. Thank you so much." Lucas stared at her, thinking, I don't understand why my fiancé wants another identity, but I just need to get married, as the only condition the king set for me was to marry. After a burst of elation and excitement, Dianjo suddenly seemed puzzled. For some reason, he seemed neither happy nor upset about this condition. If he were a member of the Lucas Montefiore family, belonging to the royal bloodline, he could escape the Empress's control. I don't understand why he doesn't appear in the main storyline, Dianjo mused. There's one more thing I'm curious about. She bravely asked Lucas, if this is so urgent, shouldn't we get married as soon as possible? The contract says the wedding is in May. Lucas replied, that's because I must first attend my coming-of-age ceremony before I can officially marry. Upon hearing this, Dianjo was shocked and surprised. Her surprise stemmed from the fact that she was actually a year older than him. Lucas, failing to understand her reaction, asked, is there a problem? Dianjo, regaining her composure, said, no, it's just that you seem so mature. I didn't expect you to be younger than me. Hearing this, Lucas sighed. I apologize. I didn't mention it, so it's understandable that you wouldn't know. But you don't have to worry about that. Can you sign now? He asked, handing her a sleek pen, a playful, almost mischievous glint in his eyes. As she took the pen, she noticed with surprise that the nib was inlaid with a high-grade magic stone. It was the first time Dianjo had seen a magic stone so clearly, befitting his status as a powerful duke. After signing the contract, Dianjo returned it to him. Lucas called for Vincent, and the butler wheeled in a basin of water, much to Dianjo's confusion. What Lucas did next shocked her even more. He dipped the contract into the water, and suddenly, Dianjo's signature on the paper vanished. Lucas explained that this was how his family stored important documents, using pens with magic stones and special ink. Dianjo, amazed, remarked that it was like magic. Lucas, changing the subject, informed her that his nephew, Michael, would be coming to the academy at the beginning of summer. Afterward, the boy would only return home during the holidays, so she would only need to look after him during those times. He then returned the agreement to her, saying she could go back to her room. Duchess Dianjo replied cheerfully, thank you. As she reached the door, she turned back to him. Let's have a pleasant year working together. Lucas was overjoyed, his smile making him appear even more handsome. He responded elatedly, I'll do my best to play the role of your husband. Have a good day. But suddenly he froze, his expression darkening. He recalled her earlier words. Like magic, he thought carefully. Only the royal family knows that magic exists in this kingdom. So why would a baron's daughter know? Not only that, she now acts as if she knows nothing about me, the one who became a laughingstock in front of everyone. Her eyes and appearance have changed so drastically, but that scent remains the same. I don't know how to accept all of this. Where does this strange feeling come from? The scene shifted to the village garden in the morning. Dianjo said cheerfully to Vincent, the butler, there are so many beautiful hydrangeas in the garden. The butler replied, those are blue hydrangeas. According to the legend of the wolf god, Lupus, their color is the same as the eyes of his beloved. Vincent also told her that these flowers could only grow in the garden of the Duke Montefiore, who inherited the royal seed. Dianjo was very surprised, saying, I didn't know that. The butler added, you can speak normally to me. After all, you are the mistress of this house. Dionjo hesitated. Yes, no, I understand. Then the butler asked, shall I prepare tea for you here? Dionjo was about to say, yes, please, but quickly changed her mind. No, thank you. She sat down in the garden pavilion and sighed, still not used to life here. It feels strange to be treated like this, she thought. Then she thought happily, but thanks to the Duke, I can see a glimmer of hope for the future. I hope everything goes well from now on. But suddenly, a rustling sound came from somewhere. The sound made her uncomfortable. The rustling grew louder, and she turned her head, annoyed, and called out, is anyone there? There was no reply, but the sound seemed to be coming from the hydrangea bushes. Dionjo, slightly frightened, her face darkening, thought, is it an intruder or a wild animal? I need to figure out what it is so I can tell someone. Thinking this, she approached the hydrangea bushes. Then, Dionjo bravely searched through the bushes with her hands, trying to see what it was. She seemed to have found something. Startled, she jumped back, quickly withdrawing her hand. A look of utter surprise spread across Dionjo's face as she recoiled as if she had discovered something shocking. It turned out that the person hidden in the hydrangea bushes was young Master Michael. When Dionjo discovered him, he too was very surprised and a little scared as he was still tangled in the branches and couldn't get up. Embarrassed and knowing he was in the wrong, the young master shouted, what are you looking at, you ugly thing? Dionjo tried to control her anger, biting back her pride and forcing a smile. She thought, I've been trying to be patient, but every time this boy opens his mouth, he calls me ugly. Seeing that she didn't speak, Michael said, don't just look at me. Get it off, you ugly thing. Unable to accept the young master's attitude, Dionjo admonished him. Young master, is that how you ask for help? No one had ever spoken to Michael like this before, so he froze, stiff as a board. Dionjo instructed him, you must say, please help me get this off. Hearing this, Michael's face fell. Unsure of what to say, he hesitantly and slowly repeated after Dionjo, asking for help. Even though he hadn't managed a complete sentence, Dionjo was satisfied. She encouraged him good. Then Dionjo gently approached and helped untangle the branches wrapped around him. She asked, that must have hurt, mustn't it? What were you doing in here, getting your hair all tangled up? After freeing him, Dionjo cheerfully helped him to his feet. She kept asking, what were you doing in there? Michael replied coldly, it's none of your business. Dionjo didn't press him further. Instead, she said cheerfully, I understand. You were playing an exploring game, right? Michael stood there, dumbfounded. His face flushed crimson, and he quickly slipped away, shouting, you ugly thing, don't touch me. Then Vincent, the butler, arrived with tea and asked Dionjo, was the young master here just now? Dionjo asked the butler curiously, is the young master always like this? Vincent hesitated, unsure how to respond. Well, he said, he's a little shy. Dionjo pressed further. Has he always been like this? The scene shifted to the next day. Dionjo heard from Vincent that Michael was shy around others because he had always been alone. He then said, shall we take a look at the kitchen first today? Besides this, Dionjo also toured the most luxurious $1,000,000 mansion, feeling as though she might get lost in its vastness. She spent the entire day exploring the house and still hadn't seen it all. The butler told her, I'll show you the rest tomorrow. Hearing this, Dionjo was taken aback. There's more, she thought to herself. I can't believe Michael has been living alone in this maze-like mansion. No wonder he turned out that way. At that moment, Vincent, still focused on his duties, led her to the kitchen. The chefs were preparing a meal and, seeing him enter, said in unison, hello, Mr. Butler. Since everyone was still unfamiliar with Dionjo, Vincent gently reminded them, you must greet the Duchess first. One of the head chefs stepped forward and introduced himself. I am in charge of the cooking in this mansion. My name is Valencia Capiro. It is a pleasure to meet you. Looking at Valencia's face, Dionjo knew from his expression that he must have been disgusted by her appearance when he saw her. He didn't even bother to hide it. Then Valencia said, well, I'll go and prepare dinner now. This wasn't anything new to Dionjo. She slowly opened the door and stepped outside, not forgetting to say, goodbye, everyone. Keep up the good work. As she walked out, she heard the sound of someone hurrying away. She knew immediately who it was and slowly approached, asking, is that you, young master? Michael trembled, remaining silent in fear, trying not to be noticed. Dionjo, with a bright smile that startled him, asked, what are you doing in the kitchen? Michael, surprised and flustered, replied, what, can't I walk around my own house? Hearing Michael's clearly fabricated answer, Dionjo tried to maintain a pleasant tone. I'm going to have tea now. Would you like to join me? I'll have them prepare some sweets for you. I hear the northern fruits are the best. Michael, outwardly indifferent and displeased, was actually quite pleased and excited by Dionjo's invitation to tea. He grumbled, how can they compare to the ones in the capital? The fruits of the north, which endure the harsh winters, are much sweeter. Michael's knowledge was indeed impressive. Dionjo responded pleasantly. Then you can tell me more about the north while we enjoy our sweets and tea. Michael feigned annoyance. How could someone from the capital not know this? If you're ugly, at least be smart. Suddenly, Dionjo's smile faded when she heard Michael say, but anyway, I'm still learning how to use a knife and fork. Dionjo stared at him, thinking, see, this boy is just an innocent and lovely child after all. As they sat down to eat together, Michael, unable to stand Dionjo's fashion sense, said with displeasure, you're already so ugly. Why do you dress like that? If you're ugly, at least dress nicely. Dionjo didn't offer much explanation, simply replying, I like to dress this way. Michael, trying to provoke her, said, if two ugly people get married, their children will be even uglier. After hearing what he said, she only wished she could take back what she had just thought. Dionjo thought to herself, but why do I feel so strange? Even though this boy keeps saying ugly this and ugly that, it feels as if someone has put him up to this. Dionjo couldn't hold back any longer. Who told you ugly people shouldn't get married? She exclaimed. Michael, unfazed, popped a piece of cake in his mouth and calmly replied, why not? She began to take on the role of civic instructor. First of all, in my eyes, you're not ugly at all, she educated him. Michael averted his gaze, unable to look her in the eye. That's only because your standards are a bit low, he muttered. Since you only see your own face, Dionjo retorted. At this, Michael still tried to explain, but my mother said my father and uncle are both ugly, and she said I'm ugly because I look like my father. Dionjo was bewildered. How could anyone say such things to a child? What are you talking about? She exclaimed, staring at him. Shining like an angel? What kind of mother would say such a thing to her own child? Isn't a mother's child always the most beautiful and radiant being? She thought. That's why the young master's mother abandoned him after his father died and ran away with her lover. I've lived in this world for so many years, yet I still can't get used to their ways. Suddenly, she could no longer hold her fork. Her face darkened as she felt a sudden drop in her blood sugar. Right? I should eat some fruitcake first, she reminded herself. But when she looked down, her plate was completely empty, as if it had vanished into thin air. The young master's cheeks were puffed out, busily chewing. Are you that hungry, young master? Dionjo asked curiously. Michael turned his head away, feigning nonchalance. No, it's just that I didn't have lunch, he mumbled. Why didn't you have lunch? Dionjo pressed, her voice sharpening. You won't grow tall if you don't eat. The young master flinched. She gently wiped his mouth with a napkin. From now on, you need to eat properly, you know, she admonished. This was the first time Michael had been shown such care, and he felt incredibly shy. I don't care. I object, he blurted out angrily. Dionjo was puzzled. Michael, panting slightly, declared, you'll never marry my uncle. I'll make sure of it. With that, he quickly slipped away, leaving Dionjo to think children are truly something else. Don't worry, relax. Your uncle isn't planning on doing anything. Suddenly, the maid clearing the table asked disdainfully, Goodness, did you really eat all of that? With a face like that, you should take better care of yourself. Dionjo tried to suppress her irritation. Oh, there are many of them here too, she thought. The maid even warned Dionjo not to give the young master any more sweets. Why? Dionjo asked, perplexed. The young master's mother set rules for him, the maid replied, and he just broke one of them. The scene transitioned to nighttime. Dionjo was drying her hair, her expression serious as she contemplated something. She recalled what the maid had told her that morning. What are these rules? She wondered. Flashback to when she was still at the dining table. Dionjo asked the maid, What do you mean? The maid replied casually, a smug smile playing on her lips. Isn't it obvious? Aside from a proper diet, the young master is forbidden from having snacks like desserts and candies. It was the madam's insistence that the young master must take good care of his body and skin. Hearing this, Dionjo felt a surge of sympathy for the young master. But what do you mean by isn't it obvious? She retorted, her anger rising towards the presumptuous maid. I don't understand why such rules would be set. I was simply asking. There's no need to get so worked up. The reason the maid gave struck Dionjo like a bolt of lightning, shattering her heart. Because the young master's face is ugly. He needs to take good care of his body and skin. Otherwise, how would he find a suitable marriage partner in the future? She said. Dionjo gripped her skirt tightly, struggling to contain her emotion. emotions. The maid didn't forget to add insult to injury as she left. But understand, one should take care of their own body first. Being near ugly people will make you ugly. Deonjo could take it no more. The fire of her anger was rising fiercely within her. Are you finished? She demanded. The maid feigned innocence. What do you mean? She asked, a flicker of fear betraying her expression. You're done talking, right? Deonjo practically shrieked. She remembered that moment, the white-hot rage that had consumed her. Luckily, Vincent, the butler, had arrived just in time to intervene. Otherwise, she didn't know what might have happened. They can look down on me. I'm used to it, Deonjo thought. But it's different for Michael. He's just a child. It's cruel to judge him based solely on his appearance. A deep wave of sympathy washed over her for the young master. Even a dog begging for food shouldn't be scolded like that. Yet the young master is forced to restrict his diet while he's still growing. She fumed, slamming her hand on the table. I've been trying to stay calm and quiet, waiting for the day I can leave this place. But on this matter, I have to say something. The scene shifted. After several days away, Lucas finally returned to the manor. Although he entered the house alone, 2 rows of servants lined the hallway, all bowing in unison. Welcome home, Your Grace, they chorused. Vincent, the butler, stepped forward to greet the Duke. As Lucas ascended the stairs, he addressed Vincent. Anything to report while I was away? As Vincent began his report, Lucas suddenly heard footsteps on the staircase. It was young Master Michael. Lucas was surprised to see Michael coming to greet him of his own accord. He stepped forward and asked the boy, "Why are you standing here? Is there something you wanted to say?" Young Master Michael blurted out, "Are you really going to marry that ugly woman?" Lucas cautioned the boy, "You mustn't say that to her." But young Master Michael persisted. "But she's really ugly. She has so many freckles on her face, and her eyebrows are uneven. She's really, really ugly." Lucas ushered the boy into a room and closed the door. Michael sighed, then hesitantly added, "But the color of her eyes." He recalled the way Deonjo had looked at him. The color of her eyes might be all right. Then, still disgruntled, he concluded, "Enough. Ugly is ugly." Duke Lucas responded with just one sentence, "Then you and I are ugly too." Michael froze, momentarily speechless. The boy mumbled under his breath, embarrassed, "That's true. Not as ugly as her, but I'm still ugly." Lucas turned and walked to another part of the room, speaking gently to Michael. "Is that all you wanted to say? I don't think you needed to come all the way here to say that." Michael continued, "And another thing, that ugly girl isn't allowed in my room." The Duke, puzzled, asked, "What?" Michael replied, I taught her a lesson this afternoon." At that moment, he had wondered why she didn't seem to care about her ugliness. Suddenly, he had heard Deonjo arguing loudly with a maid. The maid had said this wasn't a place for a baron's daughter to set foot, that it was the young master's private room. Deonjo, unable to tolerate her rudeness, had shouted back, "Is this how you treat the mistress of this house?" The two hadn't gotten along, and the confrontation had been intense. After listening to his nephew's story, Lucas said, "It's your room. You can do as you please. If anything happens, I'll handle it." Vincent, the butler, was summoned. Duke Lucas addressed his nephew. "Let Vincent and I handle this. You should go back to your room." Vincent escorted the young master back to his room, reminding him to rest. Lucas turned to Vincent. "What happened?" he inquired. The butler replied, "Just as you heard, Your Grace." He began to explain that there had been a small altercation between the Duchess and her personal maid. It wasn't just her. All the servants looked down on her. Lucas questioned him. "Why didn't you try talking to her?" "Oh, never mind. It doesn't matter. I need to hear her side of the story first." Meanwhile, Deonjo sat in her room, diligently writing. It turned out she was composing a letter, its contents a proposed adjustment to the young master's menu, allowing him a small portion of sweets each day, balancing carbohydrates, protein, and fats, all with the aim of providing adequate nutrition for a growing child. She believed that a growing child needed proper nourishment. She wondered if she was overstepping in this marriage in name only, but she couldn't simply ignore the situation. Deonjo stretched after finishing the letter. Her own reflection startled her in the mirror. A strange sense of unfamiliarity washed over her. She stared at herself, idly wondering which face was the real one. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Duke Lucas. "May I speak with you?" he asked from the hallway. She whirled towards the mirror, a flush of panic rising as she realized she wasn't wearing any makeup. "Oh dear," she muttered. "I haven't put on my makeup yet." "Just a moment," she called out. But the door seemed to be soundproof, as Lucas, having not heard her, slowly reached for the handle. Before he could open it, Deonjo flung the door open. "Have I kept you waiting?" she asked breathlessly, rushing into a flurry of excuses. I apologize. I was just preparing something. Lucas responded, I'm sorry to disturb you at this hour, but why are you sweating so much? May I come in for a moment? Dionjo gave a strained smile. Of course. Please come in, she replied stiffly. I also wanted to discuss something with you. She was surprised he had sought her out. What is it regarding? They sat at the table, the atmosphere thick with a quiet tension as neither spoke. Lucas invited her to speak first, but Dionjo insisted he begin. Both were hesitant, unsure how to broach the subject. Finally, Dionjo broke the silence, her voice gaining confidence. Well, I'll go first. I happen to overhear that the young master's diet is quite strict and restrictive. I don't think he should be forbidden from sweets, even though I know he's young. But what harm is there in letting him have some every day? It won't kill anyone, and he's still growing. Lucas listened intently. I see, he responded mildly. But does Michael like sweets? He then inquired. Dionjo blinked, a little taken aback. Yes, she said. The boy ate with gusto. Quite a lot, actually. Duke Lucas sighed softly. I see, he murmured. That child doesn't speak, so I wouldn't know. How can they live in the same house and not know? Dionjo thought, adding aloud that he seemed comfortable, even happy, while eating. But the servants say that because he's ugly, the young master shouldn't eat sweets and must suffer through a restricted diet. What does that even mean? The boy looked so happy eating them. Why don't we change who serves the young master? That kind of look always makes the boy feel scared and inferior. Lucas interrupted her. You really are different from when you were young. Why have you changed so much? You really are different from when you were young. In the end, you had to endure those looks of disdain. There was no other way, and when he goes out, that is what the boy must endure and accept. After that, he told her to rest and stood up to leave, but she stopped him. Wait, Worry gnawed at her. I never considered that just because I never saw his character in the original story doesn't mean Lucas doesn't know Lila. That indifferent look he gave me. She fell into deep thought. What happened between them? The scene shifted to young Master Michael, descending the stairs with a book in hand. He entered the kitchen. Young master, lunch is ready, a maid announced. The meal appeared simple. Salad, soup, and some bread, with no meat at all. He stared at the plate, boredom heavy in his gaze. He had no desire to pick up his fork. Michael poked at a few leaves of lettuce, then picked up a slice of tomato and put it in his mouth. Though it wasn't enjoyable in the slightest, he forced himself to eat, not daring to complain. As the boy raised his hand to his face, the maid firmly grasped his wrist, stopping him. I told you not to touch your face, she scolded, her voice sharp. It's just a side effect of the massage. Michael hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. But it's been itching since yesterday, he mumbled. The maid clicked her tongue impatiently. That means it's working, she retorted. I understand, Michael conceded meekly. The maid continued to glare at him, thinking what a bothersome young master he was. The boy's thoughts drifted to Dionjo. Oh, right, he mused. I haven't seen that ugly woman since that day. We haven't eaten together either. Meanwhile, in her room, Dionjo was enjoying a delicious meal. Taking a bite of bread, she sighed contentedly. This is so relaxing, she murmured. He told me to rest, so I suppose I don't need to study estate management for now. I've gotten a lot done in my room. First, I hung these curtains. I had Vincent install a pair of elegant blue curtains in the middle of the room. Just in case a guest comes over like yesterday, I can hide behind them and speak. Next is this. On the table sat a small pink notebook. It's my diary. I wrote some things down after reading The Cage Bird. After the Duke went back to his room, I tried to find his name in the diary. The name Lucas appears so frequently, but no matter how thoroughly you search, you can't find Lucas. Dionjo speculated that he must have known Lila in the past, which is why he sent the proposal. She wondered what Lila was like when she was younger. I don't know. I don't care. I don't remember anything, she exclaimed in frustration. Unbeknownst to her, young Master Michael was standing behind her. He looked at her, confused. What's wrong? He asked. Hearing his voice, Dionjo froze, completely stunned. She spun around, her heart pounding. What is going on? She stammered. Young Master Michael was equally startled by her beautiful face. Who are you? He gasped. They stared at each other in bewildered silence, a sudden commotion erupting throughout the manor. Sweat beaded on Lila Violet's brow as Michael's stuttering voice echoed in her ears. Michael leaned back against the chair, astonished. What did you do to that ugly woman? She looks like this now. Despite Lila's hurried reassurances, it's me, please be quiet. The boy remained utterly unconvinced. No way. Are you really that ugly woman? It wasn't the first time Michael had asked. Lila sighed, confirming her identity once more. Sitting up straight, she looked directly into Michael's eyes and began to negotiate. Hey, why you keep calling me ugly? You shouldn't say things like that to people. She appeared beautiful and elegant, but inside, Michael was in turmoil. Impossible. The boy stared blankly for a long moment, still unresponsive. Are you an alchemist? Do you know magic? Michael asked cautiously, his words causing Lila's face to stiffen. The boy voiced his suspicions, wondering what else besides alchemy, magic, or witchcraft could change someone's appearance so drastically. As soon as the words left his mouth, he panicked, clapping a hand over his lips. Lila, noticing his strong reaction, echoed his thoughts. But do you think I'm a witch? Finally, Lila had given voice to what Michael had been thinking, startling the boy into an immediate question. How did you know? In a knee-jerk reaction, Michael quickly stood up to argue. But my uncle said it's a secret that not even nobles are supposed to know. Lila grew increasingly bewildered. You've been spouting nonsense this whole time. Michael fell silent, lost in thought. Lila relented, making a request. You absolutely cannot tell anyone. You have to tell me what you're thinking so I know how to respond. I don't know what I've inadvertently said. Lost in her own thoughts, she was suddenly startled by a soft voice at her ear. No one can know you know about witches, Michael whispered, leaning closer. 1,000 unanswered questions swirled in Lila Violet's mind. There are already alchemists and wizards in this kingdom, aren't there? She thought. You fool, Michael muttered urgently. Alchemy and that kind of magic are completely different from what witches use. He lowered his voice, explaining, magic and alchemy just recreate magic through magic stones or potions. They don't have mana. Mana is an energy used to cast spells. Connecting it to witches, Michael continued. But witches, they're the ones who use mana. Their existence is top secret. In Dionjo's mind, it was as if lightning had struck, leaving her dumbfounded. Oh no, Dionjo stammered, utterly bewildered, recalling the scenes in stories where princes used magic. I didn't know there was such a rule. Because the prince used magic in the story, I thought everyone knew. What should I do? Panic seized her, leaving her at a loss. Am I a witch too? Otherwise, how could I have changed my appearance in a single day? Michael was determined to get to the bottom of it. Receiving no answer, Michael pressed on. You're a witch, aren't you? Aren't you? Dionjo denied it awkwardly. No, I'm not. Attempting to regain her composure, she tried to explain with an analogy. But you could say I know a similar method from beginning to end by preparing a kind of makeup method, using techniques similar to magic. Michael grew impatient. I don't care. Show me, he demanded, his face full of anticipation. I want to become like you, not ugly anymore, he repeated. Fidgeting, he clutched the hem of her dress, conveying his earnestness. Please, I'm begging you, he pleaded, tears welling in his eyes. Come on, please. Looking at his adorable face, Dionjo almost fainted. How could such a cute face be called ugly? She thought. Then, reconsidering, she mused, but then again, this boy really is insecure, especially about his face. The boy hated himself because of the hurt caused by others' mockery. She remembered him saying before, Mother says I'm ugly. Because he had suffered so much, the hurt transformed into a desire to hurt others. As a result, the boy had started insulting other people's appearances as well. Michael had once yelled at Dionjo, What are you looking at, you ugly thing? How could a child become like this? She worried silently. It was truly heartbreaking. Dionjo finally decided to help the boy overcome his insecurity. All right, let me help you. Michael's face lit up as a finger was held up in front of him. But then she said, on one condition. The boy was taken aback. A condition? Dionjo gently put forward a heartwarming request. You must stop thinking of yourself as ugly. She carefully tried to steer Michael back to a place of safety. The techniques I'm going to use will only bring out your good points. You can't judge others by their appearance anymore. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, understand. Michael was puzzled by Dionjo's instructions. Finally, Michael had no choice but to agree to become more beautiful. Okay, I'll think about it, he said. Dionjo responded cheerfully. All right, wait a moment. In her hands appeared a myriad of cosmetics. She laid out all the options on the table, contemplating her choices. First, we need to prepare some skincare products. Which one contains vitamins and natural ingredients? As she focused on picking through the strange items on the table, Michael asked curiously, "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, Dionjo's hand reached out and grasped the boy's small chin. She sniffed the scent of his skin. Michael flinched, stammering, "What are you doing?" Dionjo silently assessed. "There's a strange smell, as if something's been applied." Noticing Michael's face reddening, as though he was having an allergic reaction, she suspected it must be related to his skin condition. "Young master," Dionjo inquired gently, "have you been applying something to your face?" At this question, Michael froze, uncomprehending, then blurted out, "What?" Dionjo began to coax honesty with gentleness. "You have to tell me the truth, so I can help you." Michael regained his composure and replied, "I don't know. Do you remember someone coming to your bedside every night to take care of you?" He recounted to Dionjo, "The servants usually apply something to my face before I go to sleep, and I always end up scratching at it. They say it's for skincare, but it always makes me itchy. I smell something like cucumber," Michael speculated. Dionjo suddenly realized, exclaiming inwardly, "It's cucumber slices." Leaning closer to his face, she inquired, "Young master, what does cucumber taste like?" She wondered if perhaps cucumbers didn't agree with the boy's skin. Michael, puzzled by her question, replied, "What do you mean? You think I don't know?" His eyes flickered, conveying his understanding. "When you eat a cucumber, it's spicy, right?" Dionjo was taken aback, incredulous. After a moment to compose herself, she exclaimed, "Young master, from now on, you are not allowed near cucumbers. I forbid it." Michael, suddenly recalling the taste, elaborated intently, "And it makes my mouth sting." Dionjo wanted to cry, thinking cucumbers are supposed to taste refreshing. After a considerable amount of time, it was finally time to apply the cream. Dionjo's skincare routine and makeup process were nearing completion. Breathing a sigh of relief, she thought, thankfully, it wasn't too serious. Brightly, she told Michael, "All done. Do you want to look in the mirror?" A mirror was brought before Michael. Dionjo eagerly awaited his reaction. Michael stammered, stunned, Is this really me?" His face covered in numerous layers of masks. Michael still couldn't believe it. "Is this really me?" he thought. Then, angrily, he cried out, "What is this? Why'd I look like a clown? This is cheating." Dionjo nervously tried to calm him. "Listen to me, calm down. I told you this isn't anything strange. You need to do this regularly for it to improve quickly," Dionjo reasoned, offering a convincing argument. Michael remained skeptical. "I need to do this regularly?" Wanting him to forget his worries, Dionjo hurriedly ushered him towards the bed. "Don't worry, come here. Just adjust your breathing." Following her instructions, Michael settled onto the bed. "Go to sleep, and take off your socks too." Dionjo's voice suddenly rang out. Gently taking hold of his small feet, she began to rub them softly. "Let me give you a foot massage while you sleep." Michael's eyes suddenly widened, recalling a voice from his memory, on one condition. "You must stop thinking of yourself as ugly." His eyes slowly closed once more. Dionjo, observing him, suddenly realized. "You've fallen asleep?" she whispered. Dionjo sat happily at the bedside, gazing at his adorable face, smiling to herself. There's nothing more beautiful than watching an angel sleep. The more she looked, the more captivated she became by Michael's angelic features. Resting her chin in her hand, Dionjo murmured to his sleeping form, "Hey, don't you think you're thinner than other kids your age?" Leaning her face against her arm, burdened with many worries, she felt an overwhelming fondness for the little boy. Perhaps it was because he reminded her of her younger self. Her parents had also passed away when she was very young. Images of the past suddenly flooded Dionjo's mind. In her real world, as a child, Dionjo had to move from place to place every year, feeling like she was being passed around between relatives because she knew too many of their secrets. Back in the present, she gently poked Michael's chubby cheeks, reminding him, "You should do this when you're sleeping. Drink plenty of water before bed, too." Carefully, she removed the skincare mask. Having completed all her tasks, Dionjo walked over to the window and sighed through the curtains. "I'm a little tired. Too much has happened." She yawned. "I want to sleep, too." Exhausted and unable to resist the drowsiness, she climbed onto the bed. "I'll only sleep for a little while," she thought. "I'll just lie here for a bit. The owner of this bed probably won't mind." Dionjo adjusted herself into a comfortable position and quickly fell into a deep sleep. Before falling asleep, Dionjo habitually checked on Michael. "Look at that," she murmured, turning for one last admiring glance at Michael's sleeping face before drifting off herself. He looked so peaceful. As night fell and the sky filled with bright stars, a long leg stepped quietly through the doorway. Lucas Montefiore had returned home. Vincent quickly rushed out to greet him. Welcoming him back, Lucas sensed something amiss. "Has something happened?" he inquired. Vincent reported, "It's about young Master Michael. It seems he's asleep in the Duchess's room." At this news, Lucas turned in surprise. "Young Master Michael," he reiterated. Vincent slowly explained, "I don't know when he went in, but he was playing with the Duchess all afternoon. I came to the Duchess's door earlier, but there was no answer, only the sound of deep sleep. I didn't see him come out, and there hasn't been any other sound, so I presume they both fell asleep." Lucas, still processing this new information, asked, "So Michael is currently in the Duchess's room?" Vincent quickly confirmed yes. His eyes lifted, glancing thoughtfully towards Dionjo's room. "I see," Lucas replied, fully absorbing the information. His gaze softened. Snapping out of his thoughts, he turned and said, "We shouldn't wake them." Then, suddenly, Vincent respectfully responded, "Yes, Your Grace. Inform me immediately when the Duchess wakes up," Lucas requested urgently. Vincent politely replied, "Yes, Your Grace." Lucas added, almost to himself, "I need to see what those two are up to. I'm far too curious," he mused. A peaceful time flowed by in a daze. Dionjo frowned, deeply uncomfortable. "Ugh," she groaned internally. Michael's weight pressed heavily on Dionjo. Still not opening her eyes after the long sleep, she continued to complain inwardly, so heavy. After a while, Dionjo finally came to her senses, pushing Michael's leg aside and sitting up with a yawn. "How long have I been asleep?" Looking out the window, the sun was already high in the sky. "Is it already morning?" she exclaimed. "How did I manage to sleep through dinner?" The loud noise startled Michael awake as well. Rubbing his eyes, he grumbled, "So noisy." Noticing him, Dionjo gasped. "You're awake?" "I'm sorry. Did I wake you?" she said, adjusting her expression. Michael looked around, his face suddenly darkening. "Lila Violet has turned ugly again," he shrieked, shocked. "What happened to your face?" Dionjo smirked slyly. Finding his reaction endearing, she teased, "You don't like seeing this face?" Michael, still reeling from the shock, replied, "Not at all. How can you change your appearance so quickly?" He wondered. Dionjo playfully responded, "It's a secret." Suddenly, she produced a jar of cleanser. "Now wash your face with this and warm water," she instructed. Without waiting for his response, she ushered him towards the wash basin. "Don't rub too hard. There's no moisture left on your face." "Is that all?" Michael asked. Dionjo shook her head. "There are 3 more steps." Meanwhile, Vincent, standing guard outside, suddenly heard a faint call. "Vincent, Vincent!" "Good morning, Duchess Lila," Vincent greeted politely. "I was just about to call you." "It's a good thing you're already here," Dionjo replied cheerfully. "I'll be having breakfast in my room this morning," she requested carefully, "so please have it prepared. Michael is here too, so please prepare extra food for him as well. Remember, no cucumbers, and don't forget the meat and eggs," she added eagerly, supplementing the menu. "Certainly," Vincent confirmed quickly. "But if Michael is here, does that mean the young master slept in your room?" Vincent asked curiously. "Ah, he must have been tired from playing and fallen asleep," Dionjo explained awkwardly. Without another word, Vincent quickly departed. "Right, I'll go prepare the food." "Thank you," Dionjo called after him. "He still seems friendly, doesn't he? Is it because of his bad mood? I should have asked first. Is everything all right? It should be fine, right?" Lost in thought, Dionjo suddenly noticed something dreadful and froze. Lucas, who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, suddenly suggested, "Let me join you for breakfast as well." Dionjo was inwardly startled. Why was he in the Duchess's room? A variety of exquisite dishes were laid out on the table. Lucas sat calmly in a chair in the room, sipping his tea. Dionjo awkwardly watched his every move from the side. Even Michael nervously bit his lip, glancing over briefly. Both Michael and Dionjo fidgeted under Lucas's watchful gaze. Dionjo felt a blush creep up her neck. This was excruciatingly awkward. Her attention drifted momentarily, appraising Lucas's attire. He certainly had impeccable taste. The colors and style suited him perfectly, especially the way he used accessories to accentuate the look. Mentally, she commended his overall presentation and coordination. Clothes truly did make the man. Suddenly, Lucas's voice broke through her musings. Michael instinctively responded, "Yes, uncle." Lucas began, his voice laced with concern. I heard you slept with the Duchess last night. Is that correct? Caught off guard, Michael flushed crimson. His hands fidgeted nervously beneath the table as Lucas continued. You're about to enter the academy. Shouldn't you start sleeping on your own? Michael's gaze dropped, avoiding his uncle's eyes. He stammered, before Dionjo boldly interjected. Wait a moment, she declared, taking the blame upon herself. The young master was merely following my request. Actually, I haven't been sleeping well lately, as I'm still not used to this place. She scratched her cheek, feigning embarrassment as she fabricated an excuse. Finally, her fabricated tale complete, she concluded with a bright smile. So I asked him to stay with me. She even turned to Michael, adding with a wink, Isn't that right, young master? Michael, looking bewildered, nevertheless confirmed. That's right. Silence descended upon the table once more. Lucas was the first to react. Well then, he conceded, do as you please until Michael enters the academy. Michael's eyes lit up. Thank you, uncle. Beside him, Dionjo couldn't help but smile. Duchess, would you care to join me for some tea? Lucas offered, leaving Dionjo momentarily perplexed. In her mind, she pictured Lucas transforming into a monstrous beast. What did he mean by this? Was he planning to go back on his word about Michael? A fire ignited within her. I won't let this go, she thought. She was determined to protect Michael, the first person to know her secret at all costs. Returning to the present, Dionjo accepted with a fervent spirit. I will. Beside her, Michael fidgeted noticeably. Why is it so hot in here? He thought. Maybe it's because it's just the two of us. I'm so nervous. Lucas led Dionjo to a private room. Perhaps because their previous conversation hadn't gone well, a cascade of memories flooded her mind. His cruel words echoed. You're quite different from when you were younger. In her memory, he wore a glacial expression, his words sharp as shards of ice. Was it because she was now ugly, no longer the same as before? Was she finally going to endure those contemptuous gazes again? Duchess, Lucas called, his voice laced with an unfamiliar urgency. Dionjo responded, her voice trembling slightly. I'm here. A tailor will be arriving shortly to see you. Dionjo was utterly confused. What was going on? Why a tailor? Lucas sighed. We need matching attire for the coming-of-age ceremony. According to Vincent, the appointment is scheduled for today. Realization dawned on Dionjo, and her tense posture relaxed. Ah, I see, she replied quickly. All right, thank you. But then, a shadow crossed her face. In her memory, chains bound her body. The coming-of-age ceremony, the end of the contract when the ritual was over. Lucas closed his eyes. About that day, we should put it behind us. He opened his eyes slightly, watching her expression. Dionjo's spirits plummeted. Perhaps noticing the shift in her demeanor, he offered words of encouragement. She was a noble, after all, so she shouldn't worry. Lucas was momentarily captivated by the beautiful face before him. He clenched his fist, composing himself. The image of Dionjo's bright, cheerful face flashed through his mind. That innocent smile didn't suit her at all. Suppressing his emotions, Lucas said, let's leave it at that. If there's nothing else, you may return to your room. Not wanting to trouble him further, Dionjo quietly excused herself. All right, if you need anything, just call me. Left alone, Lucas pressed a hand to his forehead, a flush creeping up his cheeks. I must be going mad, he muttered to himself. A knock echoed at the door. Enter, he called. A young man with green hair bowed deeply. My lord, I found what you were looking for. This was Ashton Lucas Oakwin, his aide. He adjusted his spectacles respectfully. I'll explain with pictures, he offered. Ashton produced a report detailing all the servants who had cared for Michael. Let's see, he murmured, tracing the illustrated figures with a finger. He meticulously outlined the sequence of events. Initially, Michael's caretaker was Nanny Maria, but due to certain incidents, Maria left. Ashton continued. So, two of the Duchess's maids took over her role and began caring for Michael. Illustrations of various fruits and skincare products appeared within Ashton's narrative. From then on, the Duchess intervened in Michael's diet and skincare routine. Even the servants whisper amongst themselves that following the Duchess's instructions is an unspoken rule, like a stealthy mouse. It seems the Duchess has been quietly at work, he speculated. Lucas, seated in his chair, repeated the keywords his aide had mentioned. Diet and skincare. Of course, she'd do this while we weren't looking. Ashton added, because she detests you, my lord. Shall I order their dismissal? He suggested. Lucas, however, calmly waved a hand. It's fine. She's just meddling with trivial matters, so it's no big deal. And Michael's new servant. Meanwhile, Michael and Lila were chatting and laughing cheerfully. Lost in thought, Lucas suddenly recalled Dionjo's sorrowful gaze. A groan escaped his lips involuntarily. He hesitated. Should I entrust this task to my wife? Excuse me, my lord. Ashton interrupted, his report finished. May I take my leave? After breakfast, Dionjo returned to her room to wait. After some time, a knock finally came. It's Vincent, the butler announced. The tailor has arrived. Come in, Dionjo replied swiftly. Back when I was at the Baron's estate, I had plenty of opportunities to have clothes like this made, she mused, a thought flitting through her mind. Rather than apprehension, a sense of contemplation settled over her. So I'm not worried about ruining this dress either. Elegant heels clicked softly against the floor as a gentle voice drifted in. Greetings, Duchess. I am Dolan Physia, owner of the largest dress shop in the north. A flicker of anxiety touched Dionjo's heart, her gaze dimming slightly. Dolan continued, her voice brimming with pride. Don't worry about the dress not suiting you, for the beauty of the magnificent gown I create will mask all your flaws. Her expression suddenly turned somber, almost menacing. Dionjo sat opposite Dolan, a spark of anger igniting within her. It's people like this who dare to underestimate me, she thought fiercely. A fire burned in Dionjo's heart as she continued to assess the situation. It's people like this who dare to underestimate me. A single glance conveyed her unwavering confidence in overcoming those who looked down upon her. Suddenly, Dolan broke into a radiant smile, her voice polite. Well then, may I take your measurements first? I'll incorporate a corset with the dress to make your figure appear lovely, she declared confidently, producing a measuring tape. Please come this way and remove your clothes, the tailor requested. Dionjo's refusal was immediate and firm. No, I won't do that. Dolan, taken aback, clearly hadn't anticipated such a response. Dionjo reiterated her refusal, her voice unwavering. Just take my measurements as I am and make the dress according to those, Dionjo insisted. Inwardly, she cringed. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be difficult, she thought, struggling with her true appearance. But if I remove my clothes, my makeup will surely be revealed. Dionjo recalled past fitting experiences where other mistresses had been too afraid to even touch her, resorting to hasty, imprecise measurements. It's not like it's contagious or anything, she thought, a wave of anxiety washing over her. Will it be the same this time? The tailor looked thoughtful for a moment, then replied, I apologize, but that's a bit difficult. Dionjo froze for a second. Dolan Physia elaborated. For the dress to be truly captivating, the measurements must be precise. Other noble ladies even have to remove their clothes for measurements. She added encouragingly. Besides, you must look outstanding. Isn't that how you elevate your status as the Duchess? At those words, Dionjo's expression became unreadable. She was suddenly reminded of the constant admonishments she'd received. Act like a noble. Do you know how hard the Baron worked? A pang of sadness struck her. Those words had echoed wherever she went. Now Dionjo had to face these hurtful words once again. I've gotten too comfortable here, she thought. I can't believe I'm getting upset over this kind of attitude. Dionjo had once been a beautiful and incredibly cheerful girl, she reflected. But things are different now. I have a bright future ahead of me, yet I still have to endure this humiliation. Snapping back to the present, she began to speak. First, Dionjo provocatively crossed one leg over the other. I'm no longer the Baron's daughter, but the Duchess. I deserve respect. She carefully laid out her rules. Second, since when did a corset become the measure of a noblewoman's status? I will decide my own qualifications as the Duchess. Seeing her firm stance, the tailor could only bite her lip in frustration. Third, if you cannot sew according to the measurements I provide, the issue will be resolved by summoning another tailor. Dolan Physia's eyes widened at Dionjo's final point. Now what are you going to do? Dolan's hands trembled. Dionjo thought to herself, did I say something wrong? Dionjo stared intently at the girl before her, trying to suppress her agitation. However, she remained firm in her thoughts. But I can't cancel Duke Montefiori's order, can I? Surely dealing with the Duke increases the shop's sales. She pressed the tailor. Answer me. The tailor gritted her teeth, still refusing to respond. After a moment of hesitation, the tailor was forced to concede. Yes, madam. Dionjo praised. Wise decision. Now show me your catalog. Dolan Physia respectfully presented the sample folder to Dionjo. Here you are. Upon receiving the samples, Dionjo carefully began reviewing all the sketches. As she examined each design, she thought, the designs are good, but my concern is how I'll move around in this dress. Dionjo looked up and commanded, give me a pen. A servant quickly responded, here. Taking the pen, her eyes lit up as she began making adjustments. The main color of this dress will be crimson. The tailor's face grew bewildered as she watched Dionjo continuously modify the design. Add some feathers here and more fabric at the shoulders. Dionjo's eyes suddenly widened, and a ruffled hem. She was suddenly reminded of something Lucas Montefiore had said in the past. There's no other way. That's just what boys have to deal with when they go out into the world. Memories of the past flooded back. Michael having to cope with mental abuse. Dionjo started to mutter to herself, thinking that after all, she wasn't going there alone, and this was also her husband's coming-of-age ceremony. It wasn't just her who was being looked down upon. Dionjo stared blankly for a long time, then handed the final design to the tailor. All right, make the dress in cream. Dionjo wanted to make additional requests. Use quartz and diamonds for the jewelry, along with sapphires. Make the sleeves a bit longer, but not too long. The necklace shouldn't be too simple, but elegant. Understood. The tailor, startled by Dionjo's sudden questions, quickly responded, yes, I understand. The dress sample book was handed back to Dolan Physia. Here, the tailor accepted the task with a heart full of nervousness. It was just an unfinished sketch, but having passed through that person's hands, it had become truly perfect. A painting yet to be drawn, carefully curated by Dionjo. Dolan Physia looked up at Dionjo in surprise, but judging by the clothes she wore, it seemed this wasn't her own design. How is that possible? Noticing Dionjo's scrutinizing gaze, Dolan broke off her train of thought. Have you double-checked everything? Silence fell over the room again after Dionjo's remark. If so, then finish the measurements and leave. Dolan Physia and her assistant left the room, leaving Dionjo muttering to herself. Dionjo tried to compose herself in the chair, reassuring herself. It's not my first time dealing with something like this, but it's been a while since I've dealt with other people, so I'm a bit nervous. A knock came from outside the door. Who is it? Dionjo asked. A gorgeous flower basket was placed outside the door. The basket was from Michael. Her eyes widened in surprise. Oh, the flower basket in the middle of the hallway. Oh, it's you, Michael. Michael quickly responded. I came to give you this. Dionjo responded with delight. You brought me this basket at this hour? Michael blushed, averting his gaze as he awkwardly explained. I saw it lying on the floor, so rather than throw it away, I thought I'd bring it to you. Dionjo tapped her chin suspiciously, questioning its authenticity. Michael, both embarrassed and exasperated, retorted, It's true. I'm not making this up. Why would I give this to you? Dionjo's lips curled up in amusement as Michael continued to try and hide the truth. Do you think I'm lying? Dionjo took the beautiful bouquet from Michael. Of course not. Why would you lie to me? She hugged the bouquet tightly, smiling brightly. Thank you. It's really beautiful. Michael was speechless at the touching scene before him. He shifted his attention, stammering, the dress. How is it? Dionjo, taken aback, asked, What do you mean? I asked if the dress fits well. Michael hurriedly clarified. She laughed aloud, reassuring him. Don't worry, young master. After receiving the dress, Dionjo quickly changed into it. A soft knock came from outside the door. Dionjo hurried to open the door. Your lady is here, Lucas Montefiore began, dashing and handsome. You've already. His voice trailed off, interrupted by the beautiful girl before him. Dionjo teased, surprised by the beauty of the dress. The knock echoed again, bringing back the seamstress's earlier jest. Don't worry, young master. You'll be surprised by the beauty of the dress. Lucas's gaze swept the room, suddenly surprised. Dionjo's voice rang out. I'm here. Your lady is ready. He was utterly astonished by his fiancée. Dionjo, meticulously made up and dressed in a magnificent gown, turned to greet him. I'm here. Your lady is ready. Hearing Lucas outside the door, she called out, Oh, it's you. You're earlier than I expected. Lucas hurried to her side, asking, Are you all ready? She replied cheerfully, Just finished. Is something the matter? Dionjo listened intently as he spoke. I plan to leave earlier than expected. This morning, a letter arrived from the kingdom, inviting us to arrive before the ceremony begins. Dionjo assessed his attire, thinking how well his suit complemented her dress. The black shirt, black tie, and matching suit were truly a sight to behold. The highlights were his quartz earrings and flower-shaped brooch. Out of habit, Dionjo gradually moved closer, carefully observing his face, judging silently. He certainly looks charming today. But the Duke, Dionjo called out, her voice echoing. He asked softly, what is it, my lady? She switched into work mode abruptly. Can I touch your face? He asked, startled. What? I don't know how to interpret what you just said. Lucas was flustered. Dionjo quickly waved her hands in denial. I didn't mean it like that. She tried to recover her composure. I don't want to be rude. We're on the same side. He replied, that much is true. Dionjo pulled a chair over to the dressing table. Sit down for a moment, and you'll understand what I mean. Lucas sat down immediately, pleased but feigning annoyance. We're short on time. Dionjo quickly agreed. All right, then close your eyes for a moment. Just for a little while, she pleaded awkwardly. Lucas reluctantly closed his eyes, muttering suspiciously, this is really suspicious. Dionjo confidently picked up her makeup bag. A professional like me won't disappoint you. She laid out everything she needed. We'll only use these today. The list included cotton pads, sunscreen, primer, concealer, and foundation. She gently wiped Lucas Montefiori's face with a cotton pad. First, we need to cleanse with a cotton pad. Then, she carefully applied the primer, taking her time with each step. Montefiori dutifully lowered his head, making it easier for her to dab concealer on his freckles. She happily moved on to the final step, setting his makeup with oil control powder. Finished, he asked cockily, can I open my eyes now? Unsure what she was doing. She frantically reminded him to wait a moment longer. It's a shame to stop here, she thought to herself. After a moment, she continued to decorate and draw on his face. You can open your eyes now, she announced. Montefiori stared at himself in the mirror in surprise. What do you think? Dionjo asked cautiously. Do you like it? All the blemishes on Montefiori's refined face were covered. She exclaimed, I knew makeup would make a difference. He blankly stared at his reflection for a long moment. Montefiori recalled Dionjo's words. I knew makeup would make a difference, but I didn't think it would even cover freckles. She awkwardly tried to break the silence. If you don't like it, I can remove it for you. Since it's your coming-of-age ceremony, I thought it would be a small gift, and isn't it better to be fully prepared? Lucas Montefiori's voice suddenly rang out. My lady. He turned to her, questioning. You have this skill. Why not use it on yourself? Instead of helping yourself, you use it to help others. He questioned silently, suddenly struck by the truth. Dionjo didn't know how to respond, her mind racing. What should I do? What excuse should I use? He continued. You haven't forgotten that you're coming with me, have you? She grew more flustered the more she listened, unsure of how to respond to those words. Fortunately, a prompting voice came from outside. Your Grace, it's time to leave. I came because I was worried you'd be late. Montefiori seemed to hear clearly. He turned and said, all right, then let's go. Montefiori decided to spare Dionjo further embarrassment. Before leaving, he didn't forget to look back and say, thank you. Thank you for this gift. His words made her incredibly embarrassed, her cheeks flushing. She thought, a little incredulous. Does he really like it? She placed her hand on his. Thank goodness. Their hands touched lightly, affectionately. She thought, my makeup skills help someone. She recalled what might have happened at the morning party. Although her coming-of-age ceremony wasn't special, for his sake, she hoped these good memories would be remembered. Dionjo's anticipation was rekindled. In the carriage carrying Lucas Montefiori and Dionjo, Montefiori was engrossed in a book. He suddenly glanced out the window at the passing scenery. Outside, the warm sunlight illuminated the beautiful city stretching out before them. Montefiori turned and announced, have we entered the capital? We're almost at the Imperial Palace. Dionjo's hand gripped the hem of her dress, incredibly anxious. Finally arriving, she looked out the window with a worried heart. The coming-of-age ceremony was about to begin, just like in the original story. In the original story, she would be bound by shackles and chains. After today, the first chain would begin to bind Dionjo. Can I escape Hendrik's shackles? The magnificent Imperial Palace appeared before her. Dionjo, sitting alone, suddenly laughed. How could I make such a foolish mistake? She sighed, remembering the moment Duke Montefiori asked why she didn't use her skills on herself, a shiver running down her spine. Then, she consoled herself, relieved to have escaped in time. If she hadn't escaped, then aimlessly imagining the scenes to come, everything would be just like this. Perhaps at that moment, Dionjo would take a deep breath and say, actually, I'm playing a fictional character. I'm a female lead in that novel. If I give up, I'll be imprisoned and eventually become a fool. That's why I have to dress so plainly. Dionjo trembled at the thought. I'd have to explain it like that. He'll definitely think I'm crazy and then call off the engagement. Dionjo anxiously considered her next move. This isn't right either. What should I do? Should I change the subject every time he asks? She wondered. Suddenly, the sound of a door bursting open startled her. A servant loudly announced, "Countess Pinotli, this is currently Duke Montefiori's room." Dionjo asked frantically, "What's going on?" A familiar, sarcastic voice, seemingly recognizing Dionjo, drifted in. "I heard that ugly girl was sold off to that ugly duke in the north. So it's you here." Dionjo also recognized the irksome individual, which made her slightly flustered. "Why?" she wondered. The woman boldly declared, "I demand you leave here immediately." It was Charlotte. The quick-witted servant replied, "Miss, as I said, this room is currently being used by Duke Montefiore. Allow me to show you to another room." But Charlotte stubbornly insisted, "This is the largest room." Charlotte reiterated, "This is the largest room. Why should I give it up to that ugly couple?" Dionjo responded, her brow furrowed in annoyance. "You're mistaken." Dionjo suddenly stood up. Duke Montefiore is not someone who should be called ugly. Despite her confident words, a flicker of anxiety ran through Dionjo. Because of past trauma, Charlotte Pinotli. "I've met someone like her before," was Kim Dura. Charlotte, seeing Dionjo's reaction, seemed slightly amused. She retorted, "What did you say?" Charlotte scoffed. "So you're saying everything you told me before was a lie?" Then, swiftly switching to a mocking tone, "Ugly people must have terrible taste, right?" Dionjo calmly gave Charlotte a lesson in civility. "I don't think those are words someone who barged into another's room uninvited should be saying. What right do you have to look down on others like that?" Charlotte was momentarily caught off guard. Well, what right? But with the instincts of a longtime antagonist, she quickly continued, "Are you crazy? Why would you marry that ugly duke? You must have been forced, right? You know, real power in this kingdom comes from beauty." Dionjo remained silent, unable to utter a word, which made Charlotte inwardly smirk. "What's wrong? Check out your tongue." Contrary to her expression of haughty triumph, her trembling hand clutched the fan in her grip. "I just wanted to vent, but why did Prince Theobald choose Monica?" Because at the recent coming-of-age ceremony, the person Prince Theobald approached wasn't Charlotte. Charlotte couldn't understand. She was better than her in every way. In fact, she was frustrated because she had even asked about it, but she couldn't believe this ugly girl dared to talk to her like this. Drawing on her antagonist's strength, Charlotte gritted her teeth. Anyway, she needed to teach this girl a lesson. Then, Charlotte stepped forward and slapped Dionjo hard across the face with a loud, crisp sound. Charlotte casually sat down on a chair, fanning herself and ordering, "What are you doing? Why haven't you brought the tea yet?" The servants were flustered but didn't retreat. "About that," Charlotte interrupted. "Bring me fresh tea and clear away the one she just used." Charlotte resumed her taunts, saying the ugly duke and the ugly duchess were a match made in heaven, making Dionjo extremely uncomfortable, yet still she didn't react. Seeing his expression, Charlotte grew even more emboldened in her attack. "Can I just greet your ugly husband? I'm curious just how ugly he is that you have to forbid him from socializing." Dionjo, unable to bear it any longer, prepared to retaliate. "For someone like you to say such things?" But at that moment, the Duke appeared behind her, calling out, "My lady, I apologize for the wait. The king always wants to chat like this." Charlotte turned towards the source of the voice, ready to unleash her venom upon the supposedly unsightly couple, but the words died in her throat. Was that Duke Montefiore? Who had dared spread such vicious rumors about his appearance? The man who emerged was no ugly duckling, but a refined and strikingly handsome duke. The duke spoke again, his voice warm, yet laced with an unmistakable authority. The flower-shaped earring with a gemstone at its center, dangling from his ear, only amplified his aura of power and charm. "By the way, do you know that lowborn woman?" Both Dionjo and Charlotte froze. Duke Montefiore was talking about Charlotte, wasn't he? Duke Montefiore addressed Charlotte by name, the simple act dripping with more sarcasm than anything Charlotte herself had managed. "Miss Pinotli, have you become the crown princess without my knowledge?" Charlotte stammered a denial. "And no, Duke Montefiore pressed his advantage. Then, are you the Duchess of Hendrik Vivertrick? Dianjo watched the Duke with a flicker of surprise. While she knew he wasn't a man of gentle nature, she had never seen him wear such a chilling expression. The handsome Duke frowned slightly, feigning confusion. If not, then this is truly strange. Why have you barged into my room in such a manner? Charlotte was truly speechless now, her hand trembling around her fan, her face a mask of barely concealed rage and humiliation. Seeing no response, Duke Montefiore turned to Dianjo, his gaze softening, sending a shiver down her spine. "My lady," the Duke said, "shall we take a stroll in the garden until this uninvited guest departs?" He extended a hand towards Dianjo. After this subtle yet pointed display of affection, Duke Montefiore turned, hand in hand with Dianjo, and addressed Charlotte. "Well then, I invite you to leave." He delivered the final blow, stating that she didn't belong there. Charlotte, reeling from his words, had to grip the chair for support. Jealousy gnawed at Charlotte. Why? I haven't even received a proposal from the prince. Yet why is that ugly girl so happy? Rage seemed to simmer within her. I can't let this happen. I won't let her get away with this so easily. In another, quieter space, the only sound was the rustling of turning pages. The handsome and refined Prince Theobald was engrossed in a letter. A voice called out, "Your Highness, Prince Theobald, Lady Pinotra requests an audience." Prince Theobald frowned slightly, repeating, "Lady Pinotra requests an audience." He continued reading calmly, then asked, "Is Charlotte with her?" "Yes, she is in the drawing room." Prince Theobald gave a small smile. At first, she was so brazen, thinking herself superior to Alfonso and Hendrik. But after losing her coveted position to her friend, she quickly joined forces with them. But that's not the main issue right now. Prince Theobald inquired, "What happened? Is she bullying the palace women again?" The servant reported, "She claims to be in the first drawing room with Lady Lila Violet." Prince Theobald questioned further. "That ugly woman is in the first drawing room? So the rumors about Lucas proposing to her are true then? After all, today is Lucas's coming-of-age ceremony." Prince Theobald eagerly speculated, "This is sure to be an interesting affair. The ugliest couple in noble circles." Prince Theobald remarked casually, "Just when I was getting bored, a fresh breeze blows through this high society." At the coming-of-age ceremony held in the imperial palace, as usual, everyone was in attendance. Some whispered about Duke Montefiore. "Duke Montefiore is here today as well. Did you hear that rumor? The one about the ugly girl being sold off to Duke Montefiore?" Just then, a couple entered the hall, and the doorman announced, "Duke Montefiore and the future Duchess, Lady Estelle, are entering." Upon seeing the Duke's appearance, everyone was stunned into silence. The whispers grew louder. "Is that the ugly Duke? Oh my, why would someone like him be with that ugly girl?" Duke Montefiore turned and glared at the gossipers, silencing them. He then whispered in her ear, complimenting her. "Your makeup was a success. What do you think? I believe your skills are quite exquisite." Being a sociable man and seeing her lack of response, the Duke turned and asked, "Why aren't you speaking?" he asked, but at that moment, Dianjo was utterly frozen. Montefiore suddenly recalled that in a year's time, she would act as if she had never existed. Yet, strangely, she was kind to Michael, even standing up for the boy, solicitously helping him with his makeup and defending her when others insulted her. Duke Montefiore asked in exasperation, unsure whether to call her brave or cowardly. Suddenly, someone approached from afar, greeting them. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Excellency." The three faces were all too familiar. They introduced themselves with practiced smiles. "I am Alfonso Lubinero, and this is Duke Hendrik. I am Charlotte Pinotli." "Your Excellency," they greeted politely, but Duke Montefiore seemed utterly disinterested. His face impassive, he replied, "It's a pleasure. I am Montefiore." Even Dianjo, standing beside him, felt a twinge of embarrassment on the Duke's behalf. Alfonso and Charlotte were rendered speechless. Montefiore stepped closer to Hendrik. "It's been a while, Hendrik." "Well then, I'll take my leave." Duke Montefiore casually draped an arm around Dianjo's shoulders and walked away without a backward glance. So it was because of Charlotte. The Duke had felt intensely uncomfortable upon seeing her, thinking, "I don't want to accept that woman's greetings." How annoying and nauseating. Charlotte could no longer contain herself, her face a mixture of embarrassment and fury. I put on a pleasant face and greeted him. How dare he treat me like that? Alfonso and Hendrik, standing behind her, couldn't help but feel irritated as well. Why such an attitude? It's as if we were beneath his notice. He didn't even bother to tell us his full name. Charlotte's inner rage intensified. Why? Why does she dare to act like this? Meanwhile, Dianjo finally realized she hadn't offered a proper greeting and turned to Montefiore for guidance. Your Grace, is it all right if I don't greet dukes and marquises formally? Montefiore rolled his eyes, considering for a moment before advising Dianjo, you don't need to add Your Excellency before the names of dukes and marquises. Don't worry about it, unless it's the king. Duke Montefiore took Dianjo's hand, reminding her of her soon-to-be title as the Duchess of Montefiore. The Duke offered a charming smile, hoping she understood. Dianjo stammered, blushing, all right. Just then, a voice announced from the entrance, the shining light of the Bisham Empire. Prince Theobald Bisham Ivorinia and Lady Monica Roe Allard enter the hall. The two were clearly extraordinary figures, capturing everyone's attention, even the indifferent Duke Montefiore. Prince Theobald, dressed in regal attire, entered hand-in-hand with Lady Monica, who wore a magnificent gown. Dianjo timidly took a step back. Why? Why do I have this feeling again? Following closely behind, two even more important figures were announced. His Majesty, the King, and Her Majesty, the Queen of the Bisham Empire, enter the hall. The majesty and solemnity of the King and Queen surpassed everyone present 100-fold, 1,000-fold. King Bisham gently commanded everyone, rise. He began the introductions. Today is the coming-of-age ceremony for the nobles, and the protagonists of today will be called one by one. The master of ceremonies quickly followed the emperor's words. First, Lucas Montefiore, please come forward. Suddenly, Duke Montefiore hesitated. Dianjo, standing beside him, immediately noticed something unusual. Was he nervous? She turned to prompt him. Come, let's go up, Your Grace. You did well. But even more surprisingly, Duke Montefiore didn't move towards the stage. Instead, he turned to Dianjo. Gently, he placed a kiss on her hand. Dianjo was stunned by the unexpected gesture. Then, Duke Montefiore turned and walked towards the podium, leaving Dianjo bewildered. Why had he suddenly acted in a way so unlike his usual self? The Duke now stood before the Emperor and Empress, proud and dignified. Duke Montefiore, his gaze sharp and serious, declared, I respectfully bow to the light of Bisham, His Majesty King Kasha, and Her Majesty the Queen. The Emperor, his expression slightly stern, offered his congratulations. Lucas Montefiore, I congratulate you on your coming of age. His next words were spoken almost without looking at Duke Montefiore. I trust you will continue to be loyal to our empire. The Duke responded appropriately. My deepest gratitude, Your Majesty. Even the perceptive Dianjo noticed the palpable tension in the air. Next was Duke Hendrik Vivertrek. Dianjo continued to observe the ceremony closely. Then, suddenly, she felt the warmth of Montefiore's hand in hers. Despite the powder she had applied to even her skin tone, an undeniable blush crept up Dianjo's cheeks. Seeming to realize something, she lowered her head and smiled softly. Even amidst the warmth of the moment, Dianjo didn't forget her ephemeral task. She began to scout out her targets. Judging by their expressions and gazes, she confirmed Alfonso held no interest. Hendrik, too, seemed disinterested. At that moment, Dianjo breathed a sigh of relief. Neither of them were looking at her. Everything was going well. Finally, as long as she could avoid Prince Theobald, all three male leads in the original story would. Dianjo glanced towards her final target as she reasoned. Ominously, Prince Theobald's gaze was fixed on her, and it was a terrifying look. A sudden chill ran down Dianjo's spine. She hastily lowered her head, her mind racing in panic. Why was he looking at her like that? Clutching her chest, Dianjo felt a shortness of breath, frantically speculating. Is he looking at Lucas? No, I'm certain he's looking at me. Ever perceptive and sensitive, Duke Montefiore noticed Dianjo's unease. Seeing the beads of sweat on her brow, he asked kindly, shall I get you something to drink? Snapping out of her thoughts, Dianjo composed herself. Could you please? The Duke readily agreed. Certainly, this brought Dianjo some measure of relief. Thanks to him, I feel much better. It's a good thing I didn't come here alone. After a while, the ceremony finally concluded. The emperor rose and declared, "The ceremony is over. Everyone, please enjoy the banquet." Banquet tables, laden with delicacies, awaited the esteemed guests. Footsteps approached. The person was much taller than her. Dionjo could only see their chest. Assuming it was Duke Montefiore returning with a drink, she politely said, "I apologize for the trouble." But when she looked up, she was startled to see the face of Prince Theobald. "Help!" Prince Theobald looked down at Dionjo, his expression unreadable, but likely not benevolent. "She's as ugly as ever." It was indeed unpredictable, as even Prince Theobald himself couldn't understand his current emotions. Why was he feeling perturbed by this ugly woman? His gaze, sharp and swift, quickly assessed his surroundings. Monica watched with a puzzled expression, unsure of what he was doing. Charlotte looked as if she wanted to kill him, but even that didn't bother him much. What truly bothered Prince Theobald was Dionjo. How dare she look at him and then immediately avert her gaze? He simply wanted to see if he could endure this annoyance. Dionjo quickly bowed in greeting. "Greetings, Your Highness." Prince Theobald sighed. Fear clenched at her insides. "Why? Can I not defy the original plot? I've lived as this ugly character for 10 years. Is it all going to be for nothing?" The thought filled Dionjo with such dread that she felt tears prick her eyes. Just then, Duke Montefiore, like a hero in a story, appeared, shining brightly, to rescue her. "It's been a while, Prince Theobald." A man of few words and fewer detours, Duke Montefiore asked directly, "Your Highness, is there something wrong with my wife?" Prince Theobald, though he knew it was none of his business, felt strangely irritated. The sight of the Duke's hand resting possessively on Dionjo's shoulder further irritated Prince Theobald. "Wife, what is the meaning of this? This is unbecoming of a duke." Duke Montefiore calmly explained, "I met with His Majesty before the ceremony and informed him. We will not be required to undergo premarital training and will be wed as soon as possible." His final words, however, held a firmer, more challenging tone. "So if I call her my wife now, it is not premature." Oddly, Prince Theobald felt a surge of anger. "Why do I keep feeling so irritated?" Monica, sensing the brewing tension, quickly tugged at Prince Theobald's arm. "Your Highness, you must lead the first dance so the other couples can join in." Prince Theobald, still pondering his inexplicable irritation, decided to retreat. "It's best I don't get involved this time. They're all watching me." He turned towards the center of the hall. "Very well, I apologize for the wait." Monica responded eagerly, "It's my honor, Your Highness." Dionjo, standing behind them, breathed a sigh of relief, a reaction not missed by Duke Montefiore. As the orchestra began to play, Prince Theobald and Lady Monica moved gracefully and rhythmically across the floor. Dionjo, watching the dancing pair, still felt the relief coursing through her. "That's right, focus on your own business and stop looking at me." Suddenly, Duke Montefiore, following custom, placed his arm on Dionjo's shoulder. Lowering his handsome face, he extended a hand towards her. "Duchess, would you grant me this dance?" Dionjo felt a shy flutter in her chest. Placing her hand in his, her eyes sparkling as she looked up at him, she replied, "It would be my pleasure." In this blissful moment, Dionjo thought to herself, certain that this was where she was meant to be. Gazing at Duke Montefiore's handsome features, Dionjo could barely contain herself. Her heart felt like it might burst, a mixture of nervous excitement and pure joy. Could this feeling now be? Before she could fully bask in her happiness, trouble, as it always seemed to, found Dionjo once more. She hadn't eaten anything all day, and the restrictive nature of her dress was proving to be a considerable hindrance. The sound of ripping fabric froze them both. "What do I do?" Panic, raw and immediate, seized her. Did my dress really rip? Not now. Duke Montefiore, ever quick to assess and react, swiftly found a solution. Gently lifting her tear-brightened face, he soothed, "It's all right. Calm down and don't move." Before Dionjo could respond, she felt herself being lifted into his arms, held securely like a princess, with his hand artfully concealing the tear in her dress. Duke Montefiore quietly instructed her to walk straight towards the exit. Along the way, he didn't forget to comfort her, murmuring that they were almost to the carriage and to hold on tight. Dionjo responded shyly, a mortified blush warming her face. Leaning against his strong chest, a mixture of bliss and bewilderment washed over her. "Why is my heart beating so fast?" The coachman appeared, ready to assist them. Suddenly, the Duke sensed something amiss, muttering under his breath, "Too light." Despite the quiet utterance, Dionjo heard it. Before she could process what he meant, he commanded, "Open the carriage door. Return to the estate immediately." The coachman hurried to open the carriage door. The carriage slowly began to pull away from the grandeur of the palace. Inside, the Duke still held Dionjo, refusing to put her down. Sensing the awkwardness, Dionjo spoke. "You can put me down now." But the Duke's expression remained serious. "Madam, we need to call for seamstress." Assuming he simply meant to have the dress repaired, Dionjo agreed to let the matter go. "All right," she offered a soft apology. "I'm sorry, it's my fault." But Duke Montefiore cut her off. "I'll make her pay for this." Oh no, why had his demeanor suddenly turned so stern? Dionjo was taken aback by the intensity of Duke Montefiore's thoughts. How dare she call herself the best seamstress in the north with such shoddy workmanship, he grumbled. Dionjo quickly jumped to the seamstress's defense. "Perhaps it's because I've gained weight." Suddenly, Duke Montefiore burst into laughter. His smile was so refreshing. "It's really strange, isn't it?" Still unaware of the actual problem, Dionjo remained cautiously still. "I kept poking your waist, but you didn't react at all," Duke Montefiore said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Dionjo finally realized her mistake. "Oh no, I stuffed so much cotton in there." "Are you hiding something?" he pressed, his handsome features taking on a playfully intimidating air. "Do you want to confess, or shall I find out myself?" Before Dionjo could react, he drew her closer, pointing out her flaw. "Did you know the number of freckles on your face isn't the same as before the party?" He knew his limits, it seemed. After sufficiently frightening her, he broke into a hearty laugh, changing the subject to ease the tension. "Or did I miscount? Do I look like a weirdo?" Dionjo felt like she'd just taken a trip through the gates of hell. It was so strange. She felt as though she were falling into an abyss. "This isn't good. I'm definitely done for. What should I do? What excuse should I use now?" Duke Montefiore offered a subtly comforting remark. "Don't be scared." He smiled sweetly. "If you can't be honest with me, then let me be honest with you first." They finally arrived at the Duke's estate. After the long journey, Dionjo stepped out of the carriage, feeling dizzy and exhausted. Duke Montefiore was already there, ready to support her. "You look tired. Let me carry you," he offered, still brimming with energy. Flustered, Dionjo insisted on walking on her own. "No, I can walk by myself." Despite her exhaustion, she couldn't help but wonder, how can he not be tired at all after such a long trip? How long has he been talking nonstop? Duke Montefiore continued his monologue. "I'm not suited for the capital at all. Is it because it's full of dirty people? Though, there are people like that in the north too. Just sleep if you're tired. Don't worry. We're husband and wife now. After all, don't be shy." Dionjo recalled her previous perception of him. "I always thought he was cold, but he's so friendly. Is he pretending not to care about etiquette? When he's angry, he exudes a noble aura. If it's all a pretense, what kind of person am I marrying?" Exhausted, Dionjo wondered vaguely how she had even made it this far. She longed for rest. Just as her body swayed forward, a force pulled her back. Duke Montefiore had caught her from behind. "Let me help you," he said. Dionjo had no choice but to lean on the man before her, whose true personality was surprisingly close to her ideal type. She had never seen him smile before, so she wasn't sure, but her ideal type was someone with double eyelids, laugh lines, dimples, a mole at the corner of their eye, and good fashion sense. She could hardly believe such a person actually existed. Lost in thought about Duke Montefiore, Dionjo hadn't noticed her surroundings. He leaned in, asking, "What are you thinking, staring at me like that?" His gaze made her heart race. "Nothing," she mumbled. "If you need anything, call Vincent," Duke Montefiore instructed, his expression turning cool once more. "It seems I must leave you here to attend to some matters." But when he spoke to Dionjo again, it was with a smile. "Rest for now. We'll talk later." Dionjo felt uneasy. "I don't have anything to say." She was about to slip away when he called out, "By the way, regarding that seamstress, we also need to find you a personal maid." Dionjo's guard gradually lowered. "Then let's talk," she conceded, assuming he would finally question her about her secret. But he didn't, and that put her at ease. "Now I can rest." With the conversation concluded, they bid each other good night and parted ways. Life, as it unfolded, felt like a novel, each scene and frame filled with endless thoughts. Not only was Dionjo relieved, but even Duke Montefiore began to smile more often. Closing his eyes, he savored the moment. He had never felt so peaceful. The Duke's life had been relentless. Since childhood, he had been nothing but an ugly nobleman, mocked even for breathing. He didn't even want to think about the attitudes of the other nobles. But in that wretched party, the joyful memories with Dionjo gradually surfaced. To be able to laugh like this again, it was Dionjo's smile that allowed the Duke to relax, to smile for the first time in his life, almost forgetting who he was. But the Duke's expression soon changed. He walked towards a rather noisy room, grumbling under his breath, but it seemed some had forgotten their place. Duke Montefiore pushed the door open with force, silencing all the noise within. "How dare you enter the Duke's room without permission?" he raged. Inside sat a blonde woman and Michael. The blonde woman was Anna, the Duke's former stepmother. She casually disregarded Lucas's words. "It's rude to barge in without knocking." Anna reached out and patted Michael's head, questioning, "Do I really need permission to see my own son?" Michael, sitting beside her, could only whisper, "It's another one of those tense conversations between nobles." Anna spoke directly. "You've come at the right time. They say your ugly wife is using my room. Kick her out immediately." Lucas immediately retorted, "A duchess who neglected her duties like you has no authority whatsoever anymore." The always elegant and sharp Duke Montefiore turned to Michael, shielding him from the brewing fight. "Michael, don't you have lessons? Go to the study." Maternal instincts kicking in at the sight of her child being restrained like this, Anna immediately stood up. "I'm the real master here, that boy's mother. Who are you to order him around?" The Duke's expression turned fearsome as he repeated Anna's words. "The master here?" Duke Montefiore then summoned his two closest aides, Vincent and Alcuin. "Go and check all the servants she brought. Vincent, keep an eye on this so-called duchess." Hearing this, Anna was extremely displeased, but unable to fight against such authority. She could only curse. "You're going too far." The young Lucas shook his head and shouted, "It's truly rude to yell in someone else's house. And never call me that again, because I never once considered you my stepmother," Lucas warned, not forgetting to cast a sharper glance than usual. Though she tried to remain composed, her trembling hands betrayed her. "It's strange. He's usually so restrained." That overwhelming feeling from before, the feeling that made Anna freeze in fear. The ancient stories told of a wolf god named Lupus, whose noble bloodline still flowed through the veins of the aristocracy. Even though many had to marry those they didn't love, even though people slaughtered each other to be with their loved ones, he didn't care, for he was the god who symbolized love and family. A descendant of the wolf god Lupus. The Duke stepped aside, his expression grim. "Damn it, why does she have to show up now?" Duke Montefiore clutched his chest in pain. The immense power of the royal bloodline and this curse. The Duke's face flushed with heat. Is this really happening to him? The medicine, get the medicine. The curse was a reminder, a signal for the royal descendants that it was time to bear children. The Duke finally took out the purple potion hidden in his coat. He quickly opened the bottle and drank all the liquid in one gulp. The pain subsided, and the Duke recalled what had just happened. He should have driven her away immediately, but since this potion could only be obtained at the Imperial Palace, he couldn't ignore them. The Duke, fighting back the pain, took a few steps, memories of the past surfacing. A pathetic little boy knelt before his mother, pleading, "Mother, please." But before he could finish, his mother interrupted him. "Get out. You're so ugly, like a monster, disgusting." Lucas was suddenly reminded of those hateful taunts. He couldn't refute them. She must have felt the same way. Duke Montefiore walked alone down the darkening hallway, thinking of Dionjo. Does she hate me too? Dionjo, having changed her clothes, sat in front of the mirror removing her makeup. Her face, free of foundation, looked truly beautiful and fresh. As she removed her earrings, she reflected on everything. Thankfully, the ceremony had gone smoothly. Looking at the glittering earrings in her hand, Dionjo became pensive. A small smile touched her lips. "It must have been these that protected me." Dionjo recalled how, before the party, Lucas had sent her a jewelry box. At the time, when Oak, the butler, handed her the box, she had asked, "Did the Duke send this?" The butler explained that he said she should wear them at the coming-of-age ceremony. When Dionjo opened the box and saw a pair of earrings and a hydrangea hair ornament inside, she was momentarily mesmerized. "They're so beautiful. Are these hydrangeas?" The butler continued his explanation. "Yes, only royalty is permitted to use jewelry with hydrangea motifs. This item was previously one of the Duke's treasured possessions. If you wear it, no one, aside from the royal family, would dare to look down on you." Dionjo accepted it. The butler continued. The Duke likely has his reasons for giving you this. Dianjo quickly thought, is he telling me not to embarrass him? She recalled his earlier words. The Duke had held her hand. You only need to respect the royal family. He had reassured her, both handsome and gentle in his manner, because you will be the Duchess of Montefiore. Back in the present, Dianjo placed the jewelry back in the box, a soft smile gracing her lips. The more she got to know him, the more she felt he was different from his outward appearance. How should she repay him? Suddenly, a knock startled her, bringing a pang of guilt. Who could that be? A voice called from outside. It's Connor. I've come with the new servants. The door cracked open slightly, startling Dianjo. I'll open it myself. Wait, no. She hurriedly reapplied her freckles, muttering to herself. Did I let him in? Is he crazy? Thankfully, I haven't wiped it all off. I need to hurry. Annoyed, Dianjo threw on a robe and rushed to the door. Throwing the door open, she snapped, What's so important that you had to open the door without permission? Connor frowned. I've come to help you choose a new maid to replace Sinkson. We don't have much time. Dianjo thought irritably. A maid? Judging by their attitude, their character can't be much better. But Dianjo had a plan. She instructed Connor, go and get some refreshments. The rest of you may come in. This step was a little unpleasant for Dianjo. I'm too used to only seeing Wilson. She looked sadly at the 4 new maids. They don't even dare to look me in the eye. How can they serve someone like this? Frustrated and annoyed, she thought, how can they have this attitude in front of their master? Dianjo began the selection process sternly. Starting from the left, each of you tell me your strengths. To her annoyance, none of the maids wanted to be her personal maid, so they all answered provocatively. I can only comb hair, nothing else. I clean, but there will still be dust. I fall asleep as soon as I lie down. I have no special skills. Hearing this, Dianjo was furious. Are you pretending to be modest because you don't want this job? Connor, who had just entered with cake and tea, couldn't help but laugh at these replies. Dianjo suddenly had an interesting idea. Connor placed the cake and tea on the table. Connor suggested, you can choose first and then scold them. With that, I'll take my leave. But Dianjo's bold idea had already taken shape. She interrupted Connor. No, I like them all too much. I don't know who to choose. Wouldn't it be better to have a personal maid? All right, I have a great idea. Dianjo's words caused the atmosphere to suddenly turn ominous. Suddenly recalling Duke Montefiore's words, she declared, then I'll be honest with you first. She smiled more warmly than ever. All right, let's play a game. The maids trembled in fear. This is my family's traditional cream, she said, opening a glittering jar. She continued, if you use this before bed, your skin will definitely glow the next day. It's made by my alchemist brother. Dianjo dabbed a bit on her hand, clearing her throat while the maids continued to tremble. Finally, she declared, all right, perfect. The maids jumped. Thank you, Mississippi. Connor stared dumbfounded. Dianjo gave Connor a cold smile. Now it's just you left, isn't it, Connor? Congratulations on becoming my personal servant. Connor paled, trembling with fear. Dianjo continued, the rest of you may leave now. They left joyfully, bantering amongst themselves as they went. Poor Connor. Dianjo said, thank you very much, Connor. All of this had started 2 hours earlier, with Dianjo sitting with her legs crossed, a pretty pink dress swirling around her, her eyes gleaming with excitement. All right, let the games begin. Connor turned around in annoyance. My servants and I are busy. We don't have time to play games with you. Dianjo continued her teasing. Who will pour me tea? The person who brings the tea the fastest won't have to be my personal maid. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Then a green-haired maid quickly rushed out to fetch the tea. I'll do my best, she said. Dianjo simply sat there, smiling with satisfaction. With the most enthusiastic one eliminated in the first round, the survival game began. Dianjo continued. Who can run around the room 30 times the fastest? The servants hurriedly began to move. Dianjo called out, Connor, don't be in such a hurry. Dianjo announced the rules for the next round. Who can make their waist look the thinnest? Connor was sweating profusely from Dianjo's games. I can move very quickly, another maid replied, bending over with her hands on the floor, and I'm very light. Who can keep their legs together the longest? Who can imitate a puppy the best? One by one, with only a single chance, they were eliminated. Dianjo cheerfully continued to set the rules for each round. I've enjoyed all 4 rounds, including the ones with those who were eliminated, she thought, then said, "Bring me a gift." Now, facing the glittering cream, Dionjo thought, "It looks like modern cosmetics. The texture is quite firm. I'm tired too. Please withdraw, personal servant." Dionjo impatiently waved Connor away as he continued to tremble. As Connor turned and left in a huff, Dionjo thought, "Just by looking at him, I can tell he's short-tempered, sickly, and clueless. He's the typical young master. This game was aimed at him from the very beginning. The barking like a dog was just a smokescreen. He'll give up soon." Dionjo sighed in relief, finally able to rest. Problem solved. She lay down on the bed. Making all the decisions is exhausting, Dionjo thought. She turned on her side, pulling the covers up, but it was quite fun. She drifted off to sleep. The coming-of-age ceremony had ended smoothly. Should I be more honest with myself? I don't want to use that troublesome powder anymore. Finally, I can relax. A blonde woman sat on a luxurious sofa, a worried expression on her face. Has the young master really changed that much? She thought, I didn't care about this place or where Michael was from the beginning. But what happened after that? Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. That ugly woman. The only thing that happened was the appearance of that woman. I must see her myself. The sound of wooden clogs echoed in the hallway. The maids scattered in surprise as Anna glided past them. How does it feel? Can you feel it now? Dionjo thought inwardly. Anna, outwardly dressed in aristocratic clothing, her hair elegantly styled, her makeup impeccable, thought, this is the pinnacle of the art of makeup. Anna suddenly remembered, I can't suddenly become a different person, so I haven't changed too much. But this is all thanks to this balanced skin and physique and the protagonist's makeup. Dionjo cheerfully pushed open the door. Good evening, Duke. Before her now sat a blonde woman and a young boy at a banquet table, servants hovering nearby. It's a pleasure to meet you, the blonde woman said. I am Anna Hugh Montefiore. Dionjo thought, Montefiore, Michael's mother. Dionjo continued her internal monologue. So this is the one who abandoned her own child to the judgment of the world. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dionjo replied to Anna. I am Dionjo Violet. She pulled out a chair and sat facing Anna. The tension between them thickened. I don't even know why this is happening, she thought, but I can't seem to control myself. Dionjo glanced at the young master beside them. It's been a while, young master. The boy blurted out, yeah, ugly girl. Realizing his mistake, he quickly covered his mouth with his hand. Anna turned to Michael. Michael, you shouldn't use such words. Even if you're scolding someone truly ugly, you must choose the correct expression. You shouldn't giggle like that either. Do you want to become a laughingstock? Those who lack beauty should know how to restrain their facial expressions and words, Anna stressed. Have you forgotten everything your mother taught you? Michael lowered his head and stammered. I'm sorry. Dionjo, her hands clasped together, continued. It's all right after all. We're family. Michael looked up. Dionjo continued. Why get angry or sarcastic over a child's laughter? Anna turned to Dionjo. You're quite bold, aren't you? You haven't officially become a member of the Fitzlier family yet. Anna's tone made the young master uncomfortable. And I am his mother. I don't know what right you have to interfere. Anna's brow furrowed, a mixture of confusion and annoyance. Have you been teaching him while I was away? This boy is the Duke's heir. If he is ridiculed by society, can you take responsibility? Anna continued. Dionjo responded impassively. So what? Wasn't it you who forced the boy to eat cucumbers and smear them on his face? Anna was shocked. What on earth are you talking about? If you're trying to change the subject because you feel cornered, before she could finish, Dionjo exclaimed, You care so much about your child, don't you? Dionjo recounted Michael's words. Before bed, the servants would apply something to my face, and then it would swell up and turn red. Afterward, I couldn't help but scratch it. They said it was good for my skin, but it was itchy. Michael asked, When you eat cucumbers, do they taste spicy? Dionjo continued, unaware that this was precisely the cause of her child's swollen and itchy mouth. She has been neglecting this issue for a long time. Dionjo stated sternly. Anna was stunned. What are you talking about? Anna turned to Michael. Michael, is what she's saying true? Michael replied to his mother in bewilderment. Yes, whenever I apply it or eat cucumbers, I always feel itchy and sore. Why didn't you tell me? Anna cried out in anguish. What if something goes wrong with your body? She gripped her child's shoulders tightly. A man's voice interjected. I told you, but you dared to ignore it. Jesse and Rose, right? Lucas continued. You even know how to bring back the people I've already sent away. Guards, throw them out immediately. Anna panicked. Wait, you should leave before the moon rises as well, Lucas said to Anna. He glanced at her. Not throwing you out immediately is the last courtesy I can offer you. I just want to see my son, Anna said, her voice trembling. Michael softly called out, Mother. Anna immediately turned. What is it, Michael? Michael hesitated, then continued. Ugly no. Finally, he looked bravely at his mother and said, Dionjo isn't ugly at all. Anna was shocked. She abruptly stood, knocking her chair over. Anna stammered. The Duke interrupted. Enough. You're not even observing proper table manners. Step back. You're frightening the child. Anna immediately retreated to her own room, as if she couldn't bear to stay any longer. It seemed she had much more to say, but after a long look at Michael, she quietly left without another word. After everything calmed down and Michael had left, Dionjo called after him. I'm sorry, I didn't consider your feelings back then. Michael turned slightly. It's okay, he replied. Did you think I was just a child who doesn't understand anything? If you're not busy, would you like to see the hydrangeas in the garden? Dionjo immediately responded. Of course, let's go together. I thought he would just eat his meal in silence with his head down, Dionjo thought. But thankfully, he's all right. As they sat in the garden, sipping tea, Michael said, But your face looks a little different today. He reached out and touched her cheek. It looks more like the expression I saw that day. Dionjo replied, Of course, I'm trying to be more like you. Michael patted her cheeks with both hands. Trying, he asked. Dionjo responded, Yes, you've been trying too. You study and train diligently every day. You're so young, but you're already busy like a real duke. Michael blushed at her words. But do you know why Uncle is sick? He asked. Did something happen when you two went out? Dionjo answered, I don't know either. Why would he get sick after sending that person away? He just went back to his room. Recalling the moment, she continued. He said, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well right now. Can we talk tomorrow? Dionjo added, If it's about that, you don't have to worry. I'll go see your uncle later, okay? Michael replied, Okay, thank you. My eyes should have been green like Uncle's or blue like yours, Michael mused. Dionjo asked him why. Michael continued, I don't like my eye color at all. He looked at his reflection in his teacup. Every time I look in the mirror, I feel disgusted. He recalled his mother's words. I told you not to giggle like that. Do you want to become a laughingstock? Michael said, I don't want to see them. I hate these pink eyes. Suddenly, Dionjo leaned in from his left. But I really like your eye color. Michael was startled. What? Dionjo replied, I like pink. I saw the Duke wearing a pink coat the other day, and he looked so cool. Michael exclaimed in surprise. Really? Dionjo answered cheerfully. Really? You should try it sometime. Michael said, I see. But why does your face change so quickly? You ugly thing. Are you a magician? Dionjo pouted. You call me ugly again? Michael asked. Then do you like my face like this now? Yes, I do. Dionjo felt confused. Why did he suddenly become so serious? She wondered. Then she replied, Well, thank you. Michael looked puzzled. Why are you thanking me? He stood up. I want to go inside and read a book before bed. Dionjo agreed. Oh, then let's go together. The boy's face didn't look very happy. He took her hand and led her away. I can walk by myself, but you have to follow me. You don't even have a personal maid yet. Dionjo replied cheerfully, Okay. Then night fell. Wow, I still can't believe there's a place like this in the world. Dionjo marveled at the beauty of the palace. Later that night, she thought, I couldn't sleep, so I came out for a walk and stumbled upon this place. Are they clearing the prince's gaze? Lucas's and her true nature. Maybe it's because so much has happened lately that I can't sleep every time I go to bed. No, maybe it's because I slept too well this afternoon. Dionjo sighed. A large tree stood before her. What kind of tree is this? She thought. It smells so good. But then another thought struck her. I don't know my way around, and I don't know any better. I need to find a personal maid. Suddenly, a voice shouted, You impudent girl, do I have to lay my hands on you before you'll listen? Dionjo jumped and turned around. She saw 3 maids standing there, yelling, while another sat on the ground, shouting back, Why can't you just leave me alone? Why do I have to clean all of this? Don't push me. The other 3 continued to taunt her. Ugly and lowborn, you should just listen to others. Don't think you could be like that ugly duchess. Don't say that, the maid on the ground retorted. She's the duchess. Act like a proper servant and don't touch the young master's food. Who do you think you are to order me around? The young master, always hidden in the bushes. Dionjo overheard her name mentioned. I'm going to be scolded anyway, she thought. Should I just reveal myself? She decided to step out, wanting to know what was going on. The 4 maids jumped, startled, and shrieked. Duchess, they stammered. Dionjo raised a hand to her ear. So loud. Why aren't you working? What are you doing here? You're not allowed here, one maid declared. Only the Montefiore family can enter. Dionjo scoffed. How interesting. If I break the rules now, who would dare to punish me? His Grace, of course, another maid chimed in. Wandering around alone in the middle of the night and getting lost. You should act like a duchess. Dionjo quipped. The Duke will punish me? He'll listen to the likes of you and scold his beloved? Let me tell you, Dionjo continued, leaving the garden gate wide open and not doing your cleaning properly. What should I do about this? She concluded, and so enthusiastically teaching me etiquette, I should reward you. What are your names? The maids chirped nervously. I'm Jessie, one said. I just wanted to slack off a bit. I just came to remind her, another added quickly. Dionjo pressed on. Do you think I'm a fool? Why are you cleaning in such a tattered state? Jessie stammered. I'm sorry. She doesn't want to make a big deal out of it, Dionjo thought. I should leave it at this. Aloud, she said, enough. I'll punish you later. Leave now. The three maids turned and scurried away. They didn't even say goodbye, Dionjo grumbled. Jessie, come with me. Jessie jumped. Yes, Duchess. Jessie huddled on the sofa in Dionjo's room. Why are you so nervous? I'm not going to eat you. Dionjo continued. Ah, yes, she doesn't. Jessie responded awkwardly. You can punish me, but I'm usually not allowed on the third floor. Dionjo sat beside Jessie and spoke gently. That's not a problem. I brought you up here. Turn around. Let me put some medicine on that. Jessie turned, surprised. Medicine. Then, as Dionjo pressed the cotton to her swollen cheek, she yelped in pain. There are two reasons why I brought you up here. The first is to treat the injury on your cheek. Second, Jessie, would you like to be my personal maid? Jessie immediately raised her hands in protest. Yes, it would be an honor, but I wouldn't dare. Thank you. I'm just a lowly maid. I don't have enough. Before she could finish, Dionjo spoke softly. All right, go and rest now. Take these with you, too. Dionjo pressed the items into Jessie's hands. If you soak this cloth in water, it will expand, Dionjo explained. Use it to thoroughly cleanse your face, then pat it dry gently with a towel. Remember, don't rub too hard. Afterwards, apply this ointment. It's very effective for treating blemishes, but don't apply it with your hands. Dab it gently on your face with a clean cloth. Jessie replied, Yes, Duchess. Dionjo continued her instructions. You have to do this every night before you go to bed, understand? Yes, thank you, Duchess. I'll be sure to do so. I'm sorry to bother you so late. Jessie bowed to Dionjo. Good night, Duchess. If you need skills, you can acquire them yourself, Dionjo thought. Goodbye, Jessie. After closing the door, Dionjo mused, if I keep doing this, I'll run out of cosmetics. Should I ask the Duke for more? But those cosmetics always replenish themselves. Should I use them to start a business? I wonder how the Duke is doing now. He was so excited back then, like he'd returned to his old self. Dionjo picked up her compact, but he didn't look very well. I wonder if I can help him. Now that I've seen his true side, I feel a bit closer to him. She smoothed cleansing balm onto her face as she spoke. But I want to understand him better. The light of dawn once again illuminated the entire palace. The journey to understand the Duke. The path to Lucas's room wasn't easy. Anna Fiery appeared. If only he would speak to me, Anna murmured. It's not like I woke up early just to see him. Prepare some tea and bring it to the drawing room, Vincent instructed. Yes, I understand, Vincent replied. Dionjo stood before Anna. I haven't given you an answer yet, Anna said coldly. Let's go, Dionjo said, turning around indignantly. Whatever you say, I won't stand here and take orders from you. Now Anna and Dionjo sat facing each other in the drawing room, Vincent standing between them, a white towel draped over his right arm. Go outside for a moment, Anna commanded. I'm sorry, I can't do that, Vincent replied. Stand by the door if you're worried, Anna persisted. You can inform the young master if needed. What is she planning? Dionjo wondered. I won't do what you think I will, Anna added. It's all right, Vincent, Dionjo reassured him. Vincent finally relented. If you say so, I'll wait outside. Vincent left. What you and Michael said yesterday kept me up all night, Anna began. It was disgraceful. So you came here to vent your anger, like pulling my hair? Dionjo retorted. I really want to, Anna said bluntly. But you won't, right? Dionjo replied, as if already knowing the answer. I just want to ask you a few things, Anna continued. You choose to ask me? Dionjo questioned. Yes, Anna said. I want to hear it directly from you. That ugly, hateful person. Dionjo's displeasure was evident, but she thought, here it comes. One must become beautiful, and ugly people must be hated. Anna smoothed back her hair. Leaving your child to be raised by servants while you go out looking for lovers. Isn't that just normal? How strange. A child reminiscing about Michael with such vulgar language. Giggling foolishly. That ugly person? But Dionjo isn't ugly. Anna continued. Those words were too much for me, but there was a kind of beauty to them. When I heard that boy say ugly, it didn't feel like he was talking about you at all. Michael, that boy who always keeps his head down, looked me straight in the eyes for the first time. I couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about his gaze. I had to see her, even though I knew she wouldn't be happy either. But why? Why am I like this? Dionjo replied softly. Perhaps you've come to regret your actions. Every child deserves to be raised with love. Michael deserves to be loved. Anna was stunned. Just then, Vincent opened the door. Madam, the carriage has arrived. The Duke has had the servants bring your luggage. Please come and retrieve it. Then I must excuse myself, Dionjo said, rising to her feet. She walked away briskly. She didn't say the harsh words I expected, but that makes me even more tired, she thought. It seems the Duke will meet that person before he leaves, and the boy is probably busy studying. I should go in and rest, she thought, yawning. I really want to see them both. The sun began to shine, birds flew in flocks, and the scenery was so peaceful. Dionjo now stood before Duke Lucas's desk. Did you call for me? Yes. Good afternoon, Lucas replied calmly. I apologize for calling you so late. My conversation with her took longer than expected. Is he wearing green today? It really suits his eyes, Dionjo thought. He's already handsome, and he has such good fashion sense. I can't take my eyes off him. Why are you looking at me like that? Lucas asked. Usually, no one looks at me twice because of this ugly face. Dionjo was shocked. Ugly? Do they know what they're saying? The Duke's face is totally my ideal type. Lucas chuckled awkwardly. What are you laughing at? Dionjo demanded. I'm serious. Lucas laughed. It's just that no one has ever said anything like that to me. Is it because of your unique taste that you wear makeup like that? Well, something like that, Dionjo replied, embarrassed. I thought you'd change your mind when you stopped wearing that makeup, but you're still not being honest with yourself. You still haven't told me why you're unwell, Dionjo thought. If you don't want to say, I can't force you. She continued aloud. After all, we're just husband and wife in name. Lucas paused, looking at Dionjo. Is that so? Dionjo turned to face him again. What did you say? He asked, then placed his hand on her cheek. Do you really think that's all it is? It's really just that. Dionjo stammered. Just that? What do you mean? Lucas hesitated. Dionjo blushed. Lucas squeezed her cheek. Good elasticity. I was going to see if the freckles had faded, but it feels like pudding. I apologize for my rudeness. Lucas placed his hand on Dionjo's shoulder. Don't just stand there. Sit down and let's talk. Feeling awkward and flustered, Dionjo replied, All right. My heart almost leaped out of my chest just now, she thought. Lucas spoke first. I heard you met with several candidates for your personal maid. Did you find anyone suitable? Oh, right, not a candidate. But I'd like to choose the girl named Jessie to be my personal maid. She wasn't supposed to be on the 3rd floor, but Lucas interrupted. If you've already chosen, then that's fine. I'll inform Oak. Thank you, Your Grace, Dionjo replied. By the way, she continued, could you find me a few small glass bottles? I want to try something. Lucas paid little attention to Dionjo's request, captivated by the fragrance emanating from her. That sweet scent had returned. At first, I thought I didn't like it, but now it calms me, he mused. Dionjo asked again, Your Grace, wouldn't that be difficult no matter what? Is it because the time spent with the owner of that scent is so comfortable? Lord Lucas, Dionjo called out, startling Lucas. He turned to her, murmuring an apology. I'm sorry. You weren't responding. Are you all right? Is it because you haven't fully recovered yet? Lucas reassured her. No, I was just lost in thought. My apologies. I'll have a glass bottles sent to your room shortly. He took her hand in his. Feel free to acquire anything you desire. Anything you want, the Montefiore family can provide. Yes, thank you, Your Grace. I want you to be comfortable by my side, Lucas thought. So from now on, I'll listen to what you want. I'll hide my greed until you're fully accustomed to me. Then Lucas continued, I think we should arrange for some new dresses. You've lost weight due to your illness, and your clothes are all too loose now. Dionjo replied firmly, You know that's not the case. Please don't say that. Lucas chuckled. How would I know if you don't explain? Dionjo hesitated. About that, well, I'll find a more meticulous dress shop to handle it this time. If we go to the North District, suddenly there was a knock at the door. Lucas stood up and called out, Who is it? Michael's voice came from outside. It's me, Uncle. Michael pushed open the door, his voice trembling. I heard that ugly person is here. Dionjo stood up abruptly, surprised. Young Master Michael. Michael carried a basket overflowing with something seemingly heavy, causing his hands and feet to tremble. Dionjo asked with concern, Goodness, you're sweating. How heavy is it? Give it to me. I'll carry it. She reached out. Michael stopped her. No, it's not heavy at all. I'm sweating just because it's hot. Then he placed the basket heavily on the floor with a loud thud. What did you bring that made such a loud noise? Dionjo asked curiously. Michael replied. I picked them up on the way. Then the cloth covering the basket was pulled back, and Dionjo gasped. This? It's a basket of raw gemstones, all different colors. For you, Lucas asked. So just those large stones you were playing with in the garden, pretending to cook? The other two stared at him, dumbfounded. Dionjo excitedly corrected him. What are you saying, Your Grace? These are wonderful, rough gemstones, she continued to exclaim. Oh my goodness, there's amethyst, opal, jade, and even ruby. Are you really giving me all of these? Michael replied nonchalantly. Yeah, just those things you make such a fuss over. Nothing special. Just take them, Lucas added. I understand these are rough gemstones. However, I'm just curious why you gathered these rough stones and brought them here. Dionjo interjected. I really like them, Your Grace. Michael scoffed. Even the ugly one likes them. Lucas glanced at Michael with an impassive expression, then chuckled softly. Haha, Michael, you're quite perceptive. I give up. He continued. As I mentioned before, why don't you and Michael go to the dress shop? He handed over a check. Dionjo looked at it quizzically. What is this? A magic blank check? She asked, trembling with surprise. Is today my birthday? And I just didn't know? Michael chimed in curiously. Birthday? Hers? Tell me when it is, so I can prepare. Lucas quickly ushered them both towards the door. Go on, before it gets dark. Dionjo called out. Wait, just the two of us? Aren't you coming with us, Your Grace? It might be fun, Lucas replied. I have some business to attend to, and it's difficult to cancel my plans now. Let's go together next time. Go on, and tell me how much fun you had when you get back. All right, then we'll definitely go together next time. Before Dionjo could finish her sentence, the door slammed shut in front of her. Come on, shall we? On the other side of the door, Lucas was also breathless with excitement, his heart pounding, all because of her. How pathetic of me to be jealous of a child. I hope it wasn't noticeable. The next evening, Lucas didn't appear at the dinner table. He hadn't had breakfast that morning either, as he had to go out. Dionjo wondered, did I say something wrong? Michael poked his head in. Ugly one, what are you thinking about? Startled, Dionjo replied, I'm sorry, young master. I was thinking about something else while I was with you. I've been thinking about His Grace from yesterday. Michael responded, slamming the door. Yeah, because he couldn't go with you, it bothered him. Even though he's busy, we should get him a present, right? Dionjo smiled. Yes, that's right. They pushed open the shop door, a bell jingling. I heard the clothes from the last shop were poorly made, right? We investigated, and the owner here has a bad relationship with the owner of the previous dress shop, so this shop must be reliable. Dionjo thought. I don't know what kind of logic that is, but he must have investigated thoroughly. But why is there no one here? Michael wondered. Look, the shopkeeper is coming. Hello, dear customers. I'm sorry to have kept you two waiting. I was busy with preparations. Dionjo looked at the woman and thought. It seems she had an appointment, but she's late. And that surprised expression. If she acts impolitely in front of the young master, I won't tolerate it. Oh, Master Rupert, the woman exclaimed. Please, this way. The two of you are like peonies after the rain. I could die happy just seeing you. Dionjo froze, feeling embarrassed. This place seems a bit strange. Honor guests. I can only offer you tea. I deeply apologize. Dionjo took a sip and thought. This tea is so fragrant and clear. I just want to keep drinking it. She exclaimed, No, this tea is truly wonderful. The shopkeeper smiled. I'm glad you like it. The captivating customer, whose voice was as clear as a celestial being, asked, What kind of attire are you looking for today? Michael cleared his throat. This is my aunt. She's here to look at dresses today. The shopkeeper beamed. Oh my, young master with eyes that sparkle like blooming flowers. Is this really your aunt? Please wait a moment. I'll bring the dresses right away. Dionjo replied. All right. The shopkeeper turned and left. Dionjo thought, strange, the way she speaks doesn't sound fake at all. Michael interrupted her thoughts. What were you saying? Dionjo turned and asked. Young master? Michael continued. What was with those flowery compliments? It felt so awkward. She's probably up to something, likely going to charge us a fortune later. Dionjo chuckled. Perhaps she's being truthful. After all, I'm not the only one who likes your eyes. Michael hesitated. Really? If you're just trying to comfort me, I know you're kind enough to say that. Dionjo replied cheerfully. I didn't do anything, just spoke my true feelings. She thought to herself, though a bit unusual, it seems I've chosen the right place to come. The shopkeeper returned, a beaming smile on her face. I hope my nightingale-voiced guests will forgive me. Dionjo felt a little embarrassed, still not quite used to this manner of speaking. The shopkeeper quickly pulled out a clothing rack laden with gorgeous, stunning dresses. These are the dresses I've poured my heart into creating, she announced. Allow me to show them to you one by one. Dionjo thought, oh, displaying samples on a rack for customers to see. That's a modern method, convenient and efficient. Though it seems she's doing this because she doesn't have any staff. Before we continue, please allow me to briefly introduce myself. Dionjo replied, of course, please do. I am Kit Mizio. The clothes I create maximize the wearer's charm, ensuring everyone can live a joyful life. Every single day. The first dress I'd like to show you, as Kit explained, Dionjo mused. It's been so long since I've felt this at peace. I'm playing the role of a noble in a society strictly divided by class, but everyone I meet is busy insulting me, regardless of my status. Recalling that moment and their taunts. How could she wear that to the royal ball? She should be barred from entering. And her face, why is it so ugly? If she thinks that way, she should take care of herself first. It's all right to be friends with ugly people. Even children grow up under contemptuous gazes. If I told Lucas about those rude servants, he would surely punish them severely and drive them away. There are no solutions that aren't wicked, but everyone in this country is like this. Could he exile and punish everyone? Whether anger or revenge, they're just fleeting thoughts. I've constantly felt adrift. But as Dionjo pondered, Kit held up a blue dress. So, this dress allows you to keep the lace in the front while remaining comfortable on top. Dionjo continued her internal monologue. But there are still people like this who make me feel so at ease. She said, that dress caught my eye. Let me see it. It would be an honor. Allow me to help you into it. Kit replied eagerly. Dionjo said gently, no, I can manage on my own. Kit was ecstatic, truly touched to have her work recognized for its true value by such a beautiful customer. Dionjo thought, I'm also happy to appreciate such beautiful clothes, even if they are a bit unusual. But at least she's probably not the type to judge a book by its cover. She's someone who appreciates inner qualities and knows how to discover the charm in others. I'm Gleli Mitzia. How do I look? Dionjo asked, emerging from the fitting room in the blue dress. It's been ages since I've worn a dress I like this much, and it's even without a corset. So comfortable. Oh, absolutely stunning, Kit gushed. Dionjo rushed to reassure her. Calm down. Tears are welling up because I resonate with this moment. Truly, even if this body were to be burned right now, I would have no regrets. Dionjo soothed. I know, so be careful with your knees. Michael, who had been sitting and waiting, also exclaimed, it's beautiful. Thank you, young master. I like it very much too. Excellent. Let's buy all the dresses in this shop. Michael gestured towards the racks, and the other two stared at him, eyes wide with surprise. Dionjo whispered to Michael, young master, although I really like the dresses in this shop, we're still spending the Duke's money. Michael interrupted her. Huh? What are you talking about? I'll buy them with my saved allowance. If it were my uncle, he'd probably buy the entire shop. Dionjo chuckled softly. The entire shop? Kit sighed. Oh, the financial power of nobles is truly terrifying, so vast and measurable. Dionjo agreed. Indeed. Kit asked again what? Dionjo hesitated. Nothing. Dionjo turned back to Michael. Young master, thank you for your generosity, but you should still be more careful with your allowance. Dionjo thought, I understand, but as an adult, I should explain this to him clearly. She said, what if one day you want to buy something more expensive, or if there's a situation where you really need the money? That's money you've carefully saved. Michael replied, but I just attend lectures and study in the city every day, so I don't need to spend much money. I don't have anything I want to buy, and I don't even know how to spend it. Indeed, you've been busy studying. Dionjo thought. Lucas said the same thing, but she said, I think that's good. Michael smiled. Even if I spent it all, I definitely wouldn't regret it because I'm happy to do something for you. Both Dionjo and Kit were touched, their eyes shimmering with tears as they looked at Michael. How can you not love this little angel? Kit added, it's all right. I'll offer a reasonable price to lessen the young master's burden. But Dionjo objected. No, those are clothes I've poured my heart into. They deserve a fair price. She thought, no choice, it's come to this. I'm a grown-up now, and I have money too. Bring out all the dresses in the shop. Kit, upon hearing this, was moved to tears, thinking, if needed, I can sell cosmetics to pay off the debt. Dionjo made a mental note of this. She murmured, I'll use it wisely. Lucas, thank you for the blank check. She asked Michael. Young master doesn't have any shoes yet, right? Quickly bring them out for us to see. Kit responded eagerly, of course, right away. Young master, please wait a moment. Michael said, perplexed. What? My shoes? The setting sun painted the evening sky a brilliant orange-yellow. Dionjo said cheerfully, today was really fun, wasn't it? Young master Michael replied in a daze. Ah, yes, it was really fun. Dionjo said worriedly. Young master, you can't ascend to heaven yet. Michael continued, it was fun, but I'm really tired. Dionjo responded, happiness always comes at a price. I've carefully selected the clothes I want to wear immediately, and as for the rest, I've decided to take the newly tailored ones. Kit, quite knowledgeable about boys' clothing, was thrilled. Michael said, awkwardly but sincerely, next time, you must take me with you. Dionjo replied, yes, you absolutely must come. She thought, this child is truly an angel who lost his wings and fell to earth. Meanwhile, Michael thought, I can't die alone, uncle. Let's share the pain together. But how long are you going to call me ugly? I was just joking. It's Dionjo. Michael hesitated. Of course I know, ugly Dionjo. You could just call me Michael, he said shyly, looking down. Dionjo, still carefree, replied, okay, Michael then. That night, as Michael slept, Dionjo thought, this is strange. I just put Michael to sleep, took a walk in the hallway, and came back to wash up. Meanwhile, Lucas was gripping her crossed wrists, pressing them down on the bed. In that situation, she was both frightened and blushing. Your Grace, how did this happen? They quickly regained their composure, sitting upright on the bed. The silence was so thick, neither wanted to speak first. Dionjo's eyes darted nervously around the room. I definitely didn't come here with that intention. She felt like crying, her thoughts becoming even more muddled. I just wanted to stop by before removing my makeup. Her face flushed with regret, thinking of his scent. Because of that scent, a cascade of memories flooded Dionjo's mind. Just a while ago, she had come to his door, but there was no response. Could he already be asleep? Dionjo Violet softly called out from the hallway. Your Grace, it's me. Are you there? Still no reply. She grew slightly suspicious. Is he really asleep? The lack of response made Dionjo more worried. Could it be that his body hasn't fully recovered and he's still in pain? I'll come back tomorrow morning. She turned to leave, muttering about tomorrow's plans. She would give him a gift and confess the amount she'd written on the blank check. Just as she was about to walk away, she stopped abruptly. What's that smell? Dionjo Violet paused, intending to return to Montefiori's room. It must be coming from inside. She placed her hand on the door and gently pulled it open. And then I don't remember anything else. As if hypnotized, she walked inside. Dionjo approached the sleeping figure, her footsteps feeling guided, pulling her towards where Lucas lay slumbering. Her hand reached out involuntarily, almost touching his face, his half-closed eyes, his flushed cheeks. Suddenly, Lucas startled awake, seizing the mischievous hand that had sought to take advantage of him. He asked coldly, who? Recognizing her, Lucas released her hand. Dionjo, like someone caught red-handed in a misdeed, sat shyly at the edge of the bed. I don't even understand why I did that. I almost lost my life being mistaken for an assassin. She was incredibly nervous, as he hadn't spoken a word since then. Lucas Montefiore simply sat beside her in silence, making her even more anxious. Is he angry that I suddenly entered his room? His expression doesn't look good. Her situation felt as desperate as the famine of 1945. Dionjo felt helpless, wanting to bang her head on the floor in apology. What should I do? Beg for mercy? Kneel and plead? Simultaneously, they both spoke. I do. Startled by him speaking, Dionjo stammered. What? Please continue. He calmly reminded her. Is it really necessary to be so panicked? Lucas responded cautiously. I understand. When you were grabbed by that man and pressed down on the bed, you must have been terrified, ashamed, even gasping like a beast. He spoke in a dejected tone. So even if you said you never want to see someone like me again, I would understand. On the other hand, Dionjo, bewildered by his words, stammered, No, what are you talking about? She sincerely explained to him, It's my fault for startling you. Knowing you were asleep, I should have left. She blushed, confessing everything. I bought gifts for Michael and even a recipe book, so I wrote a larger amount on the check than expected. I was planning to discuss it directly. When I saw your face flushed and looking unwell, I panicked. I apologize for disturbing your sleep, but I never had any malicious intentions. When I saw you uncomfortable, Dionjo's heartfelt words made Lucas feel awkward. He quickly grabbed her arm, stopping her. Wait. As long as you're not uncomfortable, it's fine, he murmured. Lucas took the opportunity to embrace her, comforting his own soul. I'm not troubled at all. On the contrary, thanks to you, I'm alive. I was having a terrible nightmare. Dionjo gasped. A nightmare? What was it about? Lucas, no longer remembering the nightmare, replied, The moment I saw you, I forgot it all. Actually, right now, it feels like a dream. He continued, Your warmth, your voice, are they all just a dream? No, it's not a dream. Love has blinded my eyes, intoxicating me deeply. You want more? Much more. Let's stay like this for a while. Lucas's gaze was filled with an intense yearning for love. Through his eyes, Dionjo Violet clearly understood his feelings, even though he tried to hide his greed and draw a line. Dionjo, also immersed in bliss, agreed. All right, I'll stay here with you until you fall asleep. And so Lucas lay back on the bed, holding Dionjo in his arms. Desire grew uncontrollably. But this kindness of yours is making my greed spiral out of control. Even in my younger days, I was never this childish. Lucas's initial small request gradually morphed into a longing for something more, something longer. He asked, Can you stay tonight? Dionjo was utterly flustered, unable to speak coherently. She took a long moment, but still couldn't complete her sentence. Dionjo abruptly sat up in bed, looking as if she might refuse, but instead, she cheerfully explained, Not yet, but I'll be right back. I need to get my toiletries first. Dionjo Violet quickly hopped off the bed and dashed out. The door slammed shut. Lucas was stunned by her reaction. Because she wore makeup, she needed to wash her face before sleeping. He chuckled indulgently, finding her utterly adorable. Honestly, an air of happiness permeated beyond the castle walls. Lucas's voice filled with a newfound determination to conquer a girl completely beyond his grasp. The sun had climbed to its zenith, spilling warm light and a cacophony of noise into the room, rousing Lucas with a jolt of irritation. The day had barely begun. Dionjo, also yawning repeatedly, stirred from her sleep. What's wrong? She murmured. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Sleep a little longer. I'll handle it. Lucas Montefiore slipped his feet into slippers and hurried out of bed. Who is it? He demanded. Is it Vincent? He flung the door open impatiently. I explicitly told everyone these are my sleeping hours. Do not disturb me. To his surprise, it was Michael standing outside, his face a mask of distress. Uncle, he cried, tears welling in his eyes. Michael. Lucas frowned. What's the matter? Michael's voice trembled as he explained. Send out the knights. We can't find ugly duckling. The boy could no longer contain his emotions, bursting into tears. Mother must have done something. What are we going to do? Lucas covered his forehead with his hand, exasperated but trying to be reassuring. It's not like that. Don't worry. Michael was incredulous. He had been sleeping in the same room as Ugly Duckling, and now she was gone. He latched onto the implication. Why was he sleeping in her room? Michael didn't answer, instead continuing to voice his distress, claiming she must have been kidnapped since he hadn't returned to his own room all night. His cries grew louder. Lucas quickly tried to soothe him. Wait, calm down and listen to me. Perhaps alerted by Michael's cries, Dionjo hurried out of the room to see what the commotion was about. Michael, what's wrong? She asked, concern etched on her face. I see. She turned to Lucas, a flash of anger in her eyes. Children are allowed to knock in the morning, but why are you making him cry? Dionjo brushed past Lucas and embraced Michael, comforting him. Michael, don't cry. I'll get the recipe book. Lucas watched the scene unfold, feeling helpless. I was just about to tell her we haven't had such a pleasant morning in a long time. After a moment, Michael's mood brightened. Dionjo knelt before him and asked, Have you been looking for me since early morning? Michael replied softly, I was scared because I couldn't find you. Dionjo rushed to apologize. I'm sorry, Michael. When I came to get the recipe book, before she could finish her explanation, Michael smiled. It's okay, but aren't you wearing makeup today? Lucas, observing from the side, asked, Now the recipe book is missing too? He thought to himself, I've become the young uncle who made his nephew cry. Recalling the awkward moment, Dionjo tended to her skin in front of the mirror, thinking, I really felt guilty afterward. Returning to the room, she bowed her head apologetically. I'm truly sorry. Yesterday, I bought all the clothes in the shop with a blank check, so I abruptly left the room to discuss it. I also misunderstood this morning and got angry too quickly. I should have listened to what you had to say first. Lucas looked at her with a gentle gaze, devoid of any resentment. It's all right. You did it out of love for my nephew. Buying out the entire clothing store is fine too. Dionjo sighed deeply, her voice laced with frustration. Even though I was innocent, I still got scolded this morning. She suggested, I'll return the book to you later. Lucas moved warmly behind her, his presence shielding her makeup-free face. Dianjo turned abruptly, suggesting, or should we call someone to handle it? I also need to maintain the dignity of the lady of the house. Suddenly, a maid's voice called out, Madam, the hot tea is ready. Dianjo brightened. Coming. Comin, Jessie. With permission granted, Jessie pushed open the door, a bright smile on her face. Jessie greeted the Duchess. Good morning, madam. Dianjo walked towards the fragrant aroma, a look of delight on her face. It smells wonderful. What kind of tea is it today? Jessie replied enthusiastically. It's a blend of ginseng powder and dried fruits. Dianjo Violet took a small sip, her spirits lifting. Refreshing and sweet, enough to brighten one's mood. I'm going to savor this. It's too lonely to drink alone. Sit with me, won't you, Jessie? Jessie readily agreed. Yes, if you insist. I'd be happy to keep you company. Dianjo invited Jessie to sit and wait comfortably for the tea. Though she had told Jessie to relax if there were no special requests, the maid was eager to be of service. This was her first greeting since starting her duties. Jessie addressed Dianjo respectfully. I am Jessie Collin, and I will be your lady-in-waiting starting today. Thank you so much, madam, for entrusting me with this important position. Although you said I needn't do anything special, Jessie trailed off, her voice barely a whisper. Her face radiated a determined enthusiasm to perform her duties well. I will do my utmost to be of assistance to you in any way, madam. As Dianjo raised her teacup to her lips, she thought, since she's already said this much, even if I try to dissuade her, it won't work. I'll just let her do it. How could I live without her now? She's such a thoughtful caregiver. Jessie stood respectfully by her side. Dianjo offered gently, why don't you sit next to me and have a cup? Jessie hesitated, a touch of awkwardness in her demeanor. Oh, but, seeing her flustered expression, Dianjo extended the invitation again. Please, sit down if you're not uncomfortable. You've worked hard. Jessie finally accepted the kind offer. Yes, madam. Thank you. Dianjo was pleased that Jessie had opened up enough to sit beside her. She inquired cheerfully, have you been using the medicine and cream I gave you on time? The pimples are all gone now. Jessie responded with equal delight. Yes, I have. It doesn't itch or swell in the mornings anymore. Having someone to confide in, Dianjo's mood continued to brighten. She must have been quite excited when she got up to wash her face. The usually shy Jessie finally shared her feelings. Yes, it doesn't even hurt when I wash thoroughly with soap anymore. Suddenly, a knock interrupted the two women. Dianjo asked, puzzled, who is it? Comin. Michael rushed toward Dianjo, his face alight with a cheerful grin. Good morning, Dianjo. Dianjo returned the greeting. Good morning, Michael. What brings you here so early? Remembering Jessie's presence, Dianjo made the introduction. Wait, this is Jessie, my personal maid. Jessie respectfully stepped back towards the wall and bowed. It's an honor to meet you, young master. I am Jessie Lou Collin, in charge of attending to Duchess Dianjo. Dianjo sighed inwardly. She's really too honest. Michael averted his gaze, a little embarrassed. I see. Hello. Amused by his reaction, Dianjo said to Jessie, it seems she's a bit nervous since it's her first time meeting the young master. Having adjusted to Jessie's presence, Michael eagerly pointed at his face. Look, has my skin gotten a little better? It feels softer. I've been checking in the mirror, too. Dianjo confirmed his observation. That's right. Your complexion has indeed improved a lot. Michael proudly attributed it to her products. It's probably because of what you gave me, and because I've been taking good care of it, right? Dianjo gently placed her teacup back on the tray, disagreeing slightly. A small part of it is due to the cosmetics, but it's mainly because you've been eating and sleeping well. The unexpected praise made the boy shy. Of course, because you said that's what I should do. Suddenly, he remembered something and exclaimed, oh, right, the thing you requested last time, Dianjo, is almost finished. It should arrive soon. She gasped in surprise. Oh my, it's almost done already? Dianjo recalled the glittering stones, thinking, while I was still contemplating what to do with those gems, I ended up designing and ordering a special gift. Those stones I crafted myself. Michael pulled out the design plans. When it arrives, let's check it together to see if it was made according to your design. Dianjo questioned, can't we just leave the design plans here? What will the magic engineer look at then? Suddenly, Lucas's voice cut in, catching Dianjo's attention. Just make a copy. How can we give the Duchess's design plans to someone else? His handsome figure entering the room brought a blush to Dionjo's cheeks. As he approached, he said, "I don't know what this is, but it just arrived." Dionjo silently admired him, thinking his style today is impeccable as well. Rising to her feet, she asked, "Did you receive it and bring it yourself?" Lucas nodded in confirmation. "I was coming here anyway." He looked at her, a suggestion in his eyes. "If you're planning to open it with Michael, may I join you?" Dionjo, of course, readily agreed. She shifted to make room for him. "Yes, of course." Michael, scoot over a bit. He responded enthusiastically. "Thank you." Witnessing his uncle's unusual behavior, Michael turned around in surprise. "What's going on? Why are you suddenly smiling and saying things you've never said before?" Ignoring the boy, Lucas countered, "You seem quite happy lately. Did something happen?" Caught off guard by the sudden question, Michael found himself on the defensive. "No, nothing." Observing from the side, Dionjo commented, "Michael seems a bit flustered." Lucas finally relented, addressing his nephew gently. "Speaking of which, you two have become quite close quickly, already speaking informally with each other." He reached for the briefcase beside him. "So, what exactly is it that you designed yourself?" Dionjo smiled triumphantly, replying, "This is it." Her smile was radiant as she explained with enthusiasm. "It's a toy that helps develop both hemispheres of the brain and improves dexterity in children." "Jesse, could you please tidy up the table?" Jesse dutifully brought over a fresh cup of tea. "Certainly. Shall I prepare some new refreshments as well?" Dionjo nodded, pleased. "Yes, please. Using one's brain can lead to low blood sugar." Taking the briefcase back from Lucas, she commented, "It's quite heavy, being made of gemstones after all. Actually, I considered making jewelry with them, but in the end, I decided to challenge myself with the memories I had as a gift giver. The result is this building toy." The outcome was so perfect, Dionjo had no regrets. An image of her childhood with her parents flashed through her mind. "I remember the times playing and building things together before they passed away. That inspired this too. I want to create such good memories for Michael as well." Lucas picked up a piece, asking curiously, "What are these stone carvings and dice?" Seeing his uncle's criticism, Michael quickly defended it. "Stone carvings? No way. This is way cooler." Lucas questioned, "This is your first time seeing this today, right? Do you even know how to use it?" Michael excitedly picked up the pieces and started fitting them together. "Dionjo already showed me the design plans. See, if we connect them like this, we can create things." The boy enthusiastically listed the things they could build with the pieces: a mansion, a park, a horse, even the ocean. Lucas stared blankly at his exhilarated nephew. A knowing smile played on his lips. Lucas picked up a piece, joining in his nephew's play. "Do you know how to build? You're not going to start from the roof again, are you?" Michael suddenly asked, a nervous hesitation in his voice. "Building method? What's that?" Dionjo rested her chin on her hand, watching intently as her fiancé explained. "Place a staircase in the corner to determine the area. How many rooms will there be? How many floors are you planning to build?" After a moment of thought, Michael stammered, "Rooms, 10 rooms, 3 floors." Their voices continued to mingle pleasantly, discussing room sizes and purposes. "Your room, Dionjo's room, his room." Dionjo suddenly felt a surge of happiness in this quiet moment. She thought, "I didn't expect the Duke to join us. What an unexpected harvest season." The three of them played enthusiastically with the newly unveiled game. The room filled with cheerful laughter. "Sitting together like this, we really..." Jesse placed a fresh platter of fruit neatly on the table. The heartwarming atmosphere made Dionjo think, "It's like we're a family." After the three of them spent a delightful time together, they bid each other good night and retired to their respective rooms. Lying in bed, Dionjo replayed the joyful, meaningful day in her mind, her cheeks still flushed, her heart brimming with happiness. If only this could last forever, she thought. But after all, this is just a contractual marriage that will eventually end. Still, it felt like those happy days I spent with my parents. Unconsciously, tears had begun to stream down her face. Dionjo Violet raised a hand to stop herself, shaking her head, feeling foolish as she snapped out of her daydream. Sitting up, she scolded herself, crying, "I should be thinking about the days ahead." Though tears still lingered in the corners of her eyes, she forced herself to plan her next steps. From here, what's the best course of action? Dionjo pulled a small notebook from her purse, muttering to herself, "Besides Sisahang, there are many other things to read. If the worldview is different, it might not be worth referencing. Picking up the notebook, she read through the lines with growing interest. This is quite interesting too. The healing water spirit and the complex fictionality of my god. Cooking Wizard is my favorite work. Suddenly, Dionjo was startled by a strange entry. Why did I write this here? This page was supposed to be for post-production notes on another work. What's the story of Sasahang? Confusion reaching its peak, she exclaimed. What are you even talking about? The story ended after the female lead went stupid. Unbelievable. The synopsis already mentioned going back to the past as a keyword. Dionjo suddenly found herself in another space, stunned. Across from her, voices argued. This can't be, I must stop that lady. Theobart was arguing fiercely with Hendrik. My lady has returned to where she should be. That's that. Hendrik refused to back down, retorting, didn't you use the forbidden bewitching perfume? Dionjo was startled by the two men before her. Hendrik? Theobart. Hendrik cried out angrily. It's what that lady wanted. She said every time she got near the prince, a sweet fragrance appeared, causing her mind to become muddled. Dionjo still couldn't make sense of the confusing story in her head. What is this? I should go to my room and check the diary properly. Dionjo's steps faltered slightly. Suddenly, both Hendrik and Theobald appeared before her, calling out, My lady, why are you here? Recalling the past, she thought incredulously, I can't believe the coming-of-age ceremony is already over. Seeing the two men staring at her with such icy gazes, Dionjo grew more frightened. I already left the imperial palace quietly and safely. Why are these two staring at me with such cold eyes? A rush of memory flooded her, and Dionjo ran towards the girl lying unconscious on the ground. The girl on the ground had the exact same face as Dionjo Violet. Dionjo froze, staring at the figure before her. Fresh drops of blood scattered across the girl's pale neck. Tears streamed uncontrollably down Dionjo's face, her heart churning, unable to speak. Her name echoed endlessly in her mind. She didn't know when she returned to her bed, lying quietly, when Lucas's worried voice asked, Are you all right? What happened? Dionjo startled awake, her face deathly pale. Lucas explained his presence in her room. I came in when I heard you scream. He spoke softly, relieved to find no sign of an intruder. Perhaps you had a nightmare. The frightened Dionjo Violet clung to him, burying her face in his strong chest, sobbing. Lucas, completely caught off guard, was utterly flustered. Dionjo's body trembled uncontrollably with her weeping. Lucas gently soothed her, assuring her that everything was all right, that nothing had happened. As she gradually calmed down, he asked, Did you have a bad dream? Dionjo answered softly, Yes. She inhaled deeply, taking in his familiar scent, the sweet fragrance calming her. This was the scent that had captivated her that night. Indeed, Lucas's scent. Tears traced paths down Dionjo's cheeks as she looked up at him. But it wasn't just because of the sweet fragrance. It was also the presence of this man beside her that made her feel safe. Lucas comforted Dionjo in his arms. Releasing her, he checked her face, playfully chiding. How much did you cry? Your eyes are all swollen. Dionjo, still dazed, could only respond with a confused what. Lucas asked gently, I'll get you a warm towel. Can you stay here by yourself for a bit? Dionjo clutched his sleeve, softly agreeing. Okay. He gently loosened her grip, promising, I'll be right back. Watching Lucas leave, Dionjo curled up in bed, her expression sorrowful, still haunted by the previous nightmare. What was that dream about? The moment Lucas left, the images from the dream flooded back into Dionjo's mind, replaying vividly. Theobart, Hendrik. She remembered the image of herself lying motionless on the cold floor, and how she was mercilessly killed. Why does it feel like that dream will become reality? She wondered. A warm hand pulled her back to the present. Lucas gently lifted her chin, asking if she had calmed down, prompting her to look up. He gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Tell me if it's too hot. Dionjo, feeling pampered, looked up at Lucas, thinking how adept he was. It's hard to imagine this man crying. Suddenly, she asked him, Duke, have you ever had a nightmare? Of course, he replied softly, surprising her. His warm hand caressed the corner of her eye as he told her, The day you came to my room, I was in the midst of a nightmare. Suddenly, she pulled away from his touch, her eyes filled with expectation. Dionjo patted the spot on the bed beside her, gesturing for him to join her. Lucas understood, lying down next to her, thinking, is she truly scared or not scared at all? though I have no intention of refusing. Starting the topic, Dionjo spoke first. You've been losing sleep because of nightmares recently, haven't you? Your health hasn't been very good since the coming-of-age ceremony. You noticed, he replied. I didn't want others to see me in a weakened state. Lucas's expression darkened with sadness. Dionjo, after a moment of thought, explained, Why would you hide it? You need to open up so others can take care of you. Seeing his troubled look, she continued, Do you know the reason? Is there something that's worrying you or something you're afraid of? Lucas responded vaguely, It's just a symptom that will pass with time. I was able to survive that time thanks to you. Thank you. Lucas's face was completely immersed in the sweetness of affection. Dionjo stared at the Duke's handsome face, unable to blink. She hurriedly covered herself with the blanket, her inner thoughts racing. Why is it skipping so much? It was just a thank you. Don't beat so hard, heart. Lucas asked, puzzled. What's wrong? Your face is all red. Lucas suddenly turned and placed his hand on her forehead, feeling her temperature. You look like you're sick. You might have a fever, he said. Dionjo was about to say something when she suddenly felt a jolt at his touch, stammering, actually, then she pushed him onto the bed, exclaiming, I do have a fever. Sleeping should bring it down. The two found themselves in an awkward position, their faces close, and she caught his scent. The scent quickly sent her into a daze. It's just a side effect of the nightmare. Her heart pounded from the nightmare. Realizing her actions were a bit reckless, Dionjo tried to salvage the situation, but it was too late. Just go to sleep quickly, she mentally chanted to herself. I didn't initiate this. I'm just a one-year contract employee, just afraid of death. Lucas suddenly couldn't suppress his reaction. Holding Dionjo, his body began to tremble violently. He tried to hold back, letting out a cold chuckle. Dark memories transported him back to the past. I have nightmares every time. It's just a frustrating, recurring dream, and I've come to loathe it. Even though I've endured it for 5 years, I still can't get used to it. Countless nightmares enveloped his body, preventing him from living happily. At that moment, I heard a scream. Every time he had a nightmare, Lucas would find a way to get out, searching for her along the doors or walls, walking down the hallway, calling her name, Dionjo. His uncontrollable footsteps ran to find her. I don't care about dignity, running barefoot, forgetting this so-called nightmare. Nothing scares me more than the thought of you being in trouble. If I said something wrong out of worry, I couldn't help but rush straight to your room. Holding the woman in his arms, Lucas recalled the way the girl looked when I saw her back then. In those eyes, clearly in Dionjo's eyes, Lucas seemed to be her entire world, a source of immense comfort. Stroking her hair, he asked, Seeing me makes you feel safe, doesn't it? Dionjo responded, confused. What? Only finding true love can break the curse. The souls of two people in love seem very similar because in the Duke's heart, I felt the same thing. The vivid image of the first time Lucas pinned Dionjo down on the bed, thinking she was an assassin, surfaced in her mind. She was terrified and hurriedly called his name to wake him. Duke, ever since I met you, I feel like my heart has calmed down again. He pondered silently. From now on, let's just sleep together like this, okay? Lucas couldn't help but suggest sincerely. Looking at the handsome face opposite her, Dionjo thought, now I understand what that means. Lucas kept whispering, don't leave. Stay by my side. Sweet temptation. No matter how ferocious the night, the sun always has to rise every morning. Dionjo leaned against the bed, drowsy. She seemed unable to believe what happened last night, murmuring, a dream? Impossible. It felt too real, not like a dream. Dionjo quickly dismissed the unbelievable thought from her mind. The small note the Duke left on the pillow before leaving. The note read, I had to leave early. I told your maid to let you sleep in. Dionjo asked silently, Honey, did you oversleep? That's nice. I haven't responded to what he said last night yet. Holding the note, Dionjo reread the short message, the corners of her mouth lifting involuntarily. Clearly I'm happy, but then Hendrik from the dream sternly ordered an attack. What did Joan of Arc say? If you get close to the prince, that sweet scent will make you lose your composure. I suddenly realized that man's scent made me lose my composure, didn't it? Because of that suspicion, I don't want to respond rashly. Dionjo tossed and turned in bed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Dionjo, snapping back to reality, asked, "Who is it?" Jessie greeted respectfully from outside. "My lady, it's Jessie. I apologize for disturbing you, but there's an urgent notification. May I come in?" Dionjo Violet hadn't had time to apply her usual makeup. She frantically searched for her makeup bag. "Where did I put the bag?" she exclaimed. No, just stay there and tell me." Jessie immediately responded, "Yes, I understand, my lady." Anna Hugh Montefiore said she'll be leaving before noon today. Her eyes suddenly widened in shock. Short, steady footsteps sounded outside. Michael didn't have his usual mischievous and cheerful demeanor, instead appearing gloomy and sad. Hearing a voice calling from outside the window, Anna Hugh Montefiore turned around. "Mother, I have something to say." A woman sobbed uncontrollably in the center of a large room, covering her face. The woman was none other than Anna Hugh Montefiore. Covering her face, she questioned, "This castle is too strange. Both the young master and Michael have become strange. Letters keep coming, saying I'll love you forever, it won't change, and I don't mind spending pocket money to be kind to the child. If it were someone else, would they act like me in my situation?" Whispers echoed in the room. "But why me?" The teacup on the table had probably been sitting there for a long time, no longer emitting steam. She gritted her teeth in anger, knocking the teacup to the floor. Soft footsteps approached, the voice continuing to echo in an incomprehensible way. "Why does it seem like everything is my fault?" Just as Anna Hugh Montefiore had pulled herself together, she collapsed helplessly into a chair, stuttering and unable to speak. She wept alone until the light shone through the crack beneath the door. Anna Hugh Montefiore lifted her head, her mind made up. The longer she stayed here, the more unstable she became. She decided to leave, both the young master and her estranged son. The bright room echoed with her naive resolve. None of it mattered anymore. Let the ugly people coexist in peace. There was no one left for her here. It was time to pack her bags and leave immediately. Back in the hallway, Michael walked with a serious air, preparing to meet someone. Anna Hugh Montefiore stood by the windowsill and turned around when she heard someone call, "Mother." Michael stood before her and said, "I have something to tell you." She asked sharply, "Winston, can you give us a moment?" Winston agreed understandingly, but reminded them, "Yes, but might be inconvenient if it takes too long. Please understand." Having fulfilled his duty, Winston promptly turned and left. "It seems you're not just here to say goodbye." Sadness reflected in Anna Hugh Montefiore's eyes. Michael, standing opposite her, was incredibly nervous. After a while, the boy finally spoke, "Yes, mother." Michael bluntly expressed the thoughts he had been holding back. "If you leave this time, I hope you never return to this castle." Dionjo leaned against a nearby wall, her heart also filled with worry. "Please, mother," she thought. Asterisk, Michael went to see the lady alone. "What should I do? At least I should be there to hold his hand. Or no, Michael didn't call for me. If needed, I'll step in." Asterisk, despite her anxiety, Dionjo's thoughts weren't impulsive. She fully respected Michael's decision. Anna Hugh Montefiore clutched her skirt nervously and said, "So you hate me so much that you don't want to see me again?" She reluctantly asked the final question. Michael hurriedly retorted, "It's not hate." The boy slowly spoke the whispered words. "Until now, I've never opposed you, mother, because I felt guilty. Guilty because I didn't become the kind of son you always wanted. So it's natural that you don't like me." Suddenly, he gave his mother a bright smile, "But now I know that's not the case." Both Anna Hugh Montefiore and Dionjo were stunned by his expression. Being ridiculed, enduring scrutinizing gazes, all of it was painful for me. Because people were afraid, because they hated me, I had no choice but to endure. I didn't tell you because I was scared. Michael was indeed a sensitive child. Anna Hugh Montefiore clearly heard every word. "You'd surely say it's because I'm ugly. These are all things I have to endure." Michael's entire face exuded a look of certainty. The boy was trying his best to hold on to his mother. "But now I'm not afraid anymore." The image of Dionjo flashed through his mind. She had once eagerly asked him if he'd been on an adventure. "Thank you, it's really pretty." Or like the time the boy gave her flowers, and she joyfully accepted his gift. And then again, when Dionjo received gifts from the Duke, a smile always graced her face. "I really like it, Your Grace. Although it's ugly, it suits my taste." The image of a family of three, a space filled with love, appeared in young Michael's mind. The boy was so desperate to grasp this love that he was almost in tears. "I'm receiving love. The fact that mother hates me doesn't matter to me anymore. Anna Hugh Montefiore was taken aback by his intense reaction. There's no one left in this castle who can make mother look down on me. Michael continued emotionally, causing Anna Hugh Montefiore to close her eyes to compose herself. Dionjo clenched her hands, thinking, this boy is calmly expressing his feelings. These must be words he's been pondering for a long time. At the same time, she turned her attention to Anna Hugh. How will the lady react? Because she hasn't said anything, I can't see her expression, so I can't guess. In retrospect, it wouldn't be surprising if the lady had lost control of her emotions at that moment. Michael's sobs echoed several times, and Dionjo, heartbroken, silently resolved not to let the boy be hurt anymore. Listening to her son's every word, Anna Hugh Montefiore felt conflicted. Michael, I've always thought it natural for ugly people to be hated. She spoke each word with heavy emotion. You always avoid things that make people uncomfortable. Seeing ugly things brings discomfort. Dionjo, in the corner, bit her lip, trying to suppress her anger. What kind of words were those to say to a child? Anna Hugh Montefiore's voice resonated. But I swear I've never hated you, she said. No matter how much I think about it, I just don't understand what I did wrong. Because I love you, I always worried about you, hoping you would be well, that's all. As Anna Hugh Montefiore spoke, she stepped closer to embrace Michael. Dionjo was stunned by the scene that had just unfolded. Now, I understand. A tear flickered at the corner of Anna Hugh's eye, a tear of happiness. I made you believe I hated you. She reminisced inwardly. From the moment you were born, I felt fear. The stares you had to endure, the pain you had to bear. When I saw you, I understood that my future would be sharing that pain with you. The days following Michael's birth were filled with her helpless tears. Michael's face reminded her of unpleasant memories. What did she do? He looked just like his ugly father. Michael's father used to flatter her, saying the only thing worth looking at were her eyes, which resembled the lady's. Poor Anna, come and live with Theo. As long as you send enough money to the workers, no one will scold someone as beautiful as the lady. After being abandoned, Michael was taken in and cared for by Montefiore and Dionjo. Dionjo occupied her thoughts. It was said that even now, he remained indifferent. Back in the present, Anna Hugh Montefiore continued to murmur her feelings. She both loves you and avoids you. She didn't take care of you. She drew close to her son's face, expressing her sincere apology. I'm sorry, she said, gently stroking his head, wishing him a peaceful life. You must live well. Through Dionjo's narration, the lady silently departed. She no longer urged Michael, and there were no further conversations between them. Dionjo narrated. However, the lady left me a short message before leaving. She still had lingering worries in her heart. Anna Hugh Montefiore had come to see Dionjo, saying things only ugly people can understand. Finally, she softly uttered one word, thank you. Saying thank you in such a distasteful way was also a talent. She conveyed her extreme discomfort. Just as she was lost in thought, a sudden voice beside her caught her attention. Dionjo, Michael, now in a cheerful mood, asked, You heard everything just now, right? Did I do well? Dionjo responded in surprise. You knew all along? It turned out Dionjo's image had been etched in the boy's heart. He remembered everything related to her clearly. Yes, I could smell your scent. You must be tired from last night's nightmare. Uncle told me to stay by your side, but I was late because I was talking to Mother. Dionjo reassured him. It's okay. I was already asleep when the Duke arrived. Michael then turned his gaze to where his mother had left. Ever since Mother arrived, even Uncle hasn't been himself, and you had a nightmare, so I was a little scared. He looked up at Dionjo with a determined gaze, firmly stating, From now on, I will protect both of you. Please take care of yourselves and stay with me for a long, long time. Listening to Michael's sweet words, she felt somewhat dazed. What should I do? My feelings. Her emotions were complex and difficult to describe. Memories of the previous night surfaced. Don't go anywhere. Live with me. She felt a pang of reluctance. I have to leave. In a royal carriage, Montefiore held a marriage contract in his hand. He sighed in frustration. What am I supposed to do with this useless piece of paper? Michael sat in front of a vanity, introducing himself. I'm Michael, the young Duke of Montefiore. The boy spoke cheerfully about Dionjo. I have an aunt who's a bit silly, strange, but also very talented. I'm sincerely learning skincare from my aunt, Dionjo Rulton. He tended to his skin before bed. All done. This is also something I learned from Dionjo, he announced excitedly. I've applied all the creams. Now, I just need to wait for her to finish her bath. Dionjo takes a really long time in the bath. Why am I, at 9 years old, still waiting to sleep with my aunt? He explained mischievously. There's a reason for this. Despite his fondness, he feigned reserve. Michael softly made an excuse. Dionjo seemed to have a nightmare, so Uncle told me to do this. Holding the cream jar in his hand, he thought, it's a good thing Mother left without saying anything strange. A bag at the edge of the table suddenly caught Michael's attention. He approached the bag containing Dionjo's mysterious belongings. A little note about Michael being 9 years old and full of curiosity. He reminded himself not to be curious, not to touch a girl's important belongings without permission. It would be disrespectful. He would have to ask her to show him later. Maybe look in the drawers instead. With a sigh, he shifted his attention to nearby objects. Something in the desk drawer caught his eye, causing him to pause for a long moment. The marriage contract Dionjo had placed in the drawer. This is a contract with Montefiore? Curiosity drove him to pick up the contract, wondering what kind of agreement Dionjo had with Montefiore. Questions swirled in his mind, and he asked himself, his face paling, what does this mean? He read the contract word by word, unable to hide his fear. After the wedding, Dionjo would be leaving. Just then, the oblivious Dionjo emerged from the bathroom, humming cheerfully, feeling refreshed. Michael, you must have been waiting a long time. Startled by her voice, Michael jumped. He hurriedly crumpled the paper and tossed it aside, making an excuse. No, I was just concentrating on applying the cream and stuff. Dionjo approached excitedly, admiring his skin. So pretty. Now your skin is like a baby's. Michael frowned in protest. I'm not a child. I'm 9 years old. But Dionjo insisted. That's why your skin is so nice. Not a child, but you still need to grow taller. Now, shall we go to sleep? The paper was gone, but it still lingered in Michael's mind. The boy comforted Dionjo. Yes, if you hold me, you won't have any nightmares. In the morning, Jessie arrived in front of Dionjo's room, pushing a cart. My lady, it's Jessie. I brought you morning tea. But there was no response. Jessie hesitantly asked again, My lady, are you still asleep? Suddenly, Dionjo Violet's eyes opened wide in bed. Jessie stared at the door in confusion, waiting. Dionjo abruptly poked her head out, apologizing. I'm sorry to keep you waiting so early in the morning. Jessie was taken aback. My lady, your complexion. Did something happen last night? Dionjo immediately countered. No, I was chatting with Michael for a while last night. Please bring the tea to my room. I'll drink it slowly. She added another request. Please tell the butler to cancel Michael's morning lessons. He slept late. Jessie respectfully acknowledged the request. Yes, I understand. Jessie kindly suggested, should I change it to a tea that helps with fatigue? Dionjo readily accepted. Thank you. Watching Jessie leave slowly, Dionjo thought, Jessie really knows me well. I chose the right person. Now, I'll take a short nap before Jessie returns. She resumed her weary demeanor. I thought Michael and I would go straight to sleep after the bath last night, she mused. But somehow, Michael suddenly started praising Montefiore enthusiastically. Though it sounded like a complaint, she was actually pleased. Last night, Michael had said, Dionjo, our house is full of amazing things. Isn't it? The boy had shared eagerly. There are even alchemists and magicians in the study. When I grow up, I'll take you there, Dionjo. Seeing the boy's excitement, Dionjo had felt happy too. It's the first time I've heard of such a place, she'd said. Michael, clutching the sheets excitedly, had continued, and there are so many magical items. By the way, have you ever been to the Northern Festival? Dionjo had replied, no. Michael's face lit up with anticipation. Really? You've never been? The festival is coming soon, and there are thousands of hydrangeas. The whole place turns blue. You'll love it. She replied agreeably. Really? It must be beautiful with so many flowers. I'll have to see it sometime. Michael pondered for a moment, then continued his enthusiastic recounting of wonders. And our family's most important business is mining. Have you ever been to a mine? The boy chattered on, his excitement growing. You should definitely see it too. There's a huge lake nearby, and you can even row a boat made of magic stones. I'm too small to do it now, but when I grow a little taller than Dionjo, I'll be able to. All the stories were interesting and captivating. Dionjo shared sincerely, If I have the chance later, I'd love to go there too. It almost brought tears to her eyes. In truth, last night she'd been screaming internally. It's interesting, but I'm so sleepy. Back in her room, she looked at Michael's sleeping face. You've grown a little taller, Michael. Since Jesse would be returning soon, she thought it would be strange to put on makeup and then go back to sleep. Dionjo considered. It's not that I didn't think about telling the boy to go to sleep and continue tomorrow, but suddenly I felt a little down. A few days ago, something happened between the boy and his mother. Actually, Michael wanted to tell me more than just those praises. It turns out he's been worried about his mother. Michael seemed to be having a nightmare. A single tear appeared at the corner of his eye. Dionjo smiled, watching him for a moment. Dionjo lost control of her body and fell back onto the bed. Oh well, might as well sleep a little longer. The blue sky cast warm sunlight as Michael's serious face gazed at the person before him. Lucas Montefiore, noticing his expression, became puzzled. He spoke first. Is something the matter? Why did you come to get me? Michael respectfully requested. Uncle, may we speak privately? The boy stopped talking, staring intently. Lucas compromised. All right, Oquin, I need to speak with my nephew, so please arrange for those items to be taken back. Oquin agreed. Yes, my lord. Back in the spacious drawing room, uncle and nephew sat facing each other. Michael took out the contract he had found and placed it on the table. Lucas asked in surprise, How did you get this contract? Michael retorted, unwavering. Uncle, how could you do this to Dionjo? Suddenly countered. Lucas, unsure how to respond, exclaimed, What? Michael pressed on. How could you bind Dionjo with such a heartless contract? He stammered, No, this contract. Michael interrupted, Enough. I don't want to hear anything from a wicked liar like you. Michael slammed his hand on the table and stood up, demanding, Send her to another country after only 1 year as a wife? The boy, losing his composure, blurted out, Then break off the engagement. Despite being just a child, Michael's thoughts were unusually mature. I'm over 11 years old now. I'll make Dionjo happy. Lucas still hadn't grasped the situation. After his outburst, Michael stood there motionless. He placed his hand on his chin. After a moment of contemplation, he suddenly covered his mouth, unable to contain his laughter. Lucas burst out laughing, clutching his stomach. Seeing Lucas's expression, Michael said in surprise, Is this really you? Why are you laughing like this? He hurriedly tried to regain his seriousness. No, wait a minute, Michael exclaimed agitatedly. Is this a time to laugh? Trembling with anger, Michael retorted. Are you looking down on me because I'm just a child? Honestly, you can't deny it. Suddenly, Lucas turned serious. I don't know how you did it, but it's remarkable that you got hold of this contract, my boy. Michael gasped in surprise. What? Lucas pleaded for an alliance. I've been regretting this lately, so you must help me. To Michael's astonishment, he whispered, Let's form an alliance, Michael. Michael turned and sat down, addressing his uncle. If you're planning on using any underhanded tactics, I'll tell Dionjo. Lucas responded to the boy's words. I don't recall doing anything to make you lose trust in me. Michael retorted, Really? You've been acting like a different person lately. Michael crossed his arms, looking at the uncle before him. Fine, then what should I do? Lucas looked pleased. It's wonderful that the conversation is going so smoothly. He then scratched his head. You don't need to do anything major. First, give me this contract. Second, keep this a secret from Dionjo. Can you do that? Michael thought for a long moment, answering after a few seconds of silence. I can do that. So what are you planning to do? Lucas glanced away, not looking directly at the boy. First, besides persuading her, Michael, crossing his arms, looked slightly annoyed. What are you talking about? Lucas frowned in exasperation. A child like you doesn't need to understand. Grown-ups know what to do. The boy sitting opposite him warned, If you do anything suspicious, I won't let you get away with it. If you threaten Dionjo in any way, Lucas interrupted, clearly irritated. You've been grilling me since earlier, and that's not right. You're not the only one who wants to be good to Dionjo. Michael stared silently at his uncle for a moment. Then Lucas crossed his legs and arms, listening quietly as his nephew spoke. The uncle I know, I never thought you'd fall in love or take a liking to anyone. Lately, you seem to have become a completely different person. He lowered his eyes. That's right. Your uncle has become like this all because of your Dionjo. The image of a violet-haired woman slowly surfaced, accompanied by Lucas's voice calling out, Duchess. She makes me want to be more honest in front of her. Lucas earnestly told his nephew. I feel like I've finally found my true self. Michael leaned back, supporting himself with his hands behind him. My uncle used to be a lone wolf, but lately it's like all his luck has run out. Lucas grabbed Michael and carried the boy outside. I understand, so now get out, Michael added helplessly, still so sly, even a bit petty. He set his nephew down. Lucas said, you and I are no different. You used to be obedient, but now you're yelling and being disrespectful. Finally, he patted the boy's head lightly. Time for school, future Duke. Looking at his messy hair, the boy grumbled, look at this bird's nest. Future Duke, huh? Michael stuck his tongue out at his uncle discreetly, then turned and left. As soon as he stepped out the door, Michael adjusted his hair, a hint of joy on his face. Actually, I respect him a lot. Walking along, the boy felt happy. Dionjo's arrival has changed my uncle for the better. A few days later, before a magnificent window, stood Dionjo with a very lovely face and large, sparkling eyes. Looking at herself in the mirror, she made some adjustments as Lucas had suggested. Today we are going to the Northern Festival. A few days prior, Dionjo had been sitting and having tea with Lucas. The Northern Festival? He'd replied, I attended the meeting, and they mentioned it would be held earlier today. Lucas looked at her happily. If you like, we can visit the local area. Dionjo strolled through the local area. Like other regions, the North was also divided into noble and commoner areas, though there were no rules prohibiting movement between the two. Dionjo held a cup of tea, her voice slightly anxious. I really like it, but can I go? I don't want to be self-conscious about other people's gazes. Lucas smiled. As long as they don't know who we are, it'll be fine. Dionjo nodded. That works too. Blushing slightly, feeling a little happy, she continued. If the Duke agrees, I'd like to go. Oh, let's take Michael with us. Before she could finish, Lucas interrupted her. Michael can't go. As soon as he said this, an awkward silence fell between them. Dionjo asked why, but before she could continue, he said, he can't go. Just the two of us. Dionjo looked a little disappointed, but Michael seems to want to go with us too. Lucas looked utterly helpless. He's been skipping classes a lot lately, so I want him to focus on his studies. Besides, even if you ask him, he'll say the same thing as me. Dionjo was a little surprised. Really? I understand. Suddenly, a flicker of sadness crossed Lucas's eyes. It's a little difficult for us to go out as well. He placed his hand on a gift box. I have one more request. Here, take this gift. Dionjo's eyes widened in confusion as she stared at the neatly wrapped gift box in front of her. Yes, is this for me? Lucas crossed his arms and looked at Dionjo. It was obvious the gift was for her, but in the end, she didn't even ask. Feeling a little shy, she thought, this is so embarrassing. How can I ask? Finally, she said to him, thank you. Can I open it now? Lucas nodded his consent. Go ahead, it's yours. Slowly opening it, Dionjo was completely stunned, her cheeks gradually flushing crimson. Seeing what was inside, she breathed a dress. Lucas replied with evident pride, yes, wear it when you go out with me. His gaze softened. You don't need heavy makeup. No one will scrutinize you. Dionjo gasped. What? Then she began to panic. No, I'm happy, but what if we're discovered? You're the Duke. What if there's an assassination attempt? Lucas laughed. No one knows your face anyway. Then, resting his chin on his hand, he added, I've never gone out without makeup either. Dionjo listened quietly as he continued. Last time, when you did my makeup, my face felt a little stuffy. We just need one day, that's all. Her eyes widened as she looked at Lucas, thinking, although it sounds appealing, I thought he couldn't understand my feelings, but now he's being considerate of me. Then Dionjo smiled brightly. Okay, I'm really looking forward to that day. It seemed Lucas was someone who would accept any suggestion on the spot. He was being so thoughtful and considerate of her, thinking of everything for her. Dionjo stood in front of the mirror and began to examine herself. I look a bit silly. Then she looked at her face more intently. Perhaps unconsciously, she'd chosen a hat that could cover her entire face. The design of the dress was also comfortable and very much to her taste. How did he know my preferences? The more she spoke, the wider her smile grew. What should I call a husband like this? There's a name, a car brand name, called Benben. Having said this, Dionjo suddenly became dejected. Now's not the time to think about this. We're just in a contractual relationship. Her hand pressed tightly against the mirror. I've been wandering in places where no one knows me. I've been living a life wanting to work in the cosmetics industry. I'll become a billionaire through my own abilities. Happiness should be like this. Dionjo tried to console herself. I'll overcome the obstacles and be honest with him. If I'm still kicked out after a year, then the situation will be dire. Then, rallying her spirits, she stretched, thinking, just be grateful and enjoy this outing. Keep moving forward. Elsewhere, Lucas stood before a mirror, gazing at himself for a long time, his eyes deep and filled with an immense sadness. The day finally arrived. When we go out this time, I'll tell her to cancel the contract. The contract period is 1 year until the official marriage. The royal family has already approved the cohabitation period and the marriage proceedings. Lucas lowered his head. At this rate, she'll leave in a few months at most. I'm getting anxious. He adjusted his collar, thinking the Montefiore family contracts involve magic. They're not easily broken. I will keep and hold on to Dianjo. But because of Michael, if Dianjo agrees, it can be canceled. Lucas recalled a previous incident. It was too difficult to separate Michael alone. The boy angrily said to me, "What? I was looking forward to the festival too. If you can't keep Dianjo, if you fail, I'll leave too." Lucas sighed. Whether it's that boy or me, neither of us can live without her. Then he slowly picked up his hat. When she saw the dress, her eyes lit up. I know some fun places worth taking her to enjoy, but I still can't understand her intentions. He placed the hat on his head. If her intentions are the same as mine, that would be wonderful. Lucas stepped out the door and walked towards Dianjo. Ariarte stood before Prince Theobald and Charlotte. "Your Highness, Theo, do you know what perfume I'm wearing today?" She affected a knowledgeable air. "I heard the scent of green grapes is quite popular these days. If your Highness doesn't mind." Before she could finish, Charlotte cut her off. "Prince Theo dislikes fruity scents, Miss Ariarte." Ariarte, thoroughly annoyed, glared silently at Charlotte. Quickly composing her features, she turned back to the prince. "If that's the case, your Highness, how about a floral scent? This one was developed by the royal perfumer, extracted from lilac blossoms." Ariarte produced a bottle and spritzed it before the prince, who remained indifferent as he had been to her words. "I heard your Highness has been having strange dreams lately. The scent of your clothes might help you sleep more soundly." Theobald's gaze darkened, lost in silent contemplation. He recalled recent events. For the past few days, a woman had repeatedly appeared in his dreams. That violet-haired woman was none other than Dianjo. She called out to Theo, turning to look at him, her lavender hair carrying the faint scent of lilacs. Theobald hesitated, his hand reaching out. "I just want to answer her call, to embrace her." Theobald imagined himself chasing her endlessly, but he couldn't reach her because she didn't want him. She was willing to hold another man's hand, but she rejected Theobald. He wanted to imprison her. After capturing her, he even wanted to kill her. Hendrik had once questioned him. "Wasn't it your Highness who used a scent to bewitch and ignite that fire?" The lady said that when she approached the crown prince, she smelled a sweet fragrance, and her mind gradually became strange. A sly look crossed Theobald's face. "I'm not the type to use such lowbrow tricks as bewitching scents, but I must make others obsessed with my fragrance." Ariarte, not giving up, continued her relentless prattle. "Your Highness, do you like this scent?" But before he could respond, Binya suddenly appeared, interrupting her. "Your Highness, will the autumn hunting competition be held as it was last year?" He spoke directly to the prince, ignoring the fuming Ariarte at his side. "The venue is the royally owned forest, and will the invitation list and invitations be the same as last year?" Prince Theobald raised a hand to his chin, considering. I don't think there will be any changes. The location and invitation list have remained the same for a long time." Hearing this, Charlotte immediately jumped into the conversation. "The royally owned forest is the venue, but why not change the invitation list? For instance," her eyes gleamed with malicious cunning, "like that unsightly couple." Each word dripped with pointed emphasis. "If you're inviting royalty, you can't leave out the Montefiore family, can you?" Prince Theobald was silent for a few seconds. Suddenly, the figure from his dream flashed into his mind, and he connected it with Dianjo. In retrospect, somehow, that woman resembled the person in his dream. Theobald slapped a hand to his face in exasperation. "No, that's absurd. That hideous face. It's unforgivable to let her wander around alive. The same hair and eye color are just a coincidence." Seeing Theobald's reaction, Charlotte called out, "Your Highness." Ariarte chimed in from his side. "Miss Penotely, if that's the case, then His Highness will have to see their faces throughout the entire hunting competition." Suddenly, a voice rang out. "Interesting. Invite the Montefiore family." She asked, bewildered, "Your Highness?" But he replied, "As you said, we should have some new amusement. We can't be bored adored forever. Thinking of Dionjo, Theobald enunciated each word. It just so happens I've been displeased with that arrogant look as well. Let's see how to toy with her. Meanwhile, at the Northern Festival, Dionjo, filled with excitement, looked at her surroundings. Wow, it's so beautiful. Dionjo gazed up at the beautiful flowering tree. Lucas, she asked, are there trees like this in the Duke's greenhouse? He nodded. They haven't bloomed in the greenhouse yet. This is called a jacaranda. Catching a falling blossom, Lucas continued. It's a flower that symbolizes the northern summer. I prefer jacarandas to hydrangeas. He turned and placed the blossom on Dionjo. Its meaning is radiant happiness. His gaze held an infinite tenderness. This color suits you perfectly, my lady. Lucas Winkton's words stunned Dionjo. She tugged her hat down slightly, thinking, there's no point in having a large frame for a view if all you have to do is look up to see a sky like this. Touching her cheek, Dionjo murmured, it used to be easy to compliment him on his looks, but now I can't. Lucas smiled at her warmly. Shall we go somewhere else? Dionjo agreed. Yes, let's. Amidst the bustling streets, the two chatted pleasantly. There are so many people here, Dionjo remarked. Lucas explained, because the population here is several times that of the noble district. Do you find it inconvenient? Dionjo shook her head. No, I quite like this atmosphere. Their footsteps fell in sync. Do you come here alone every year? She asked. When I was younger, I often preferred to stay at home, Lucas replied. But after becoming the Duke, I became busier, so I rarely go out. Dionjo asked curiously, do you have friends here? Lucas answered, unfortunately, I'm not a very sociable person. She laughed brightly. Hey, seeing all the things you've been doing for me lately, you seem quite popular. Suddenly, a voice called out nearby. Kebabs. Delicious kebabs here. Everyone come and try them. It was a vendor attracting customers. Kebabs are healthy, delicious, and cheap. Come and try our special spicy flavor. Dionjo thought, kebabs? Spicy. Looking at the enticing skewers, Dionjo couldn't help but salivate. Wow, those spicy ones look intense. Noticing her distraction, Lucas turned immediately. My lady, what are you looking at? Hearing the vendor continue his call, kebabs. Delicious kebabs here, he smiled to himself and promptly led Dionjo to the stall. Give me one of each flavor. The owner greeted them enthusiastically. Coming right up. That'll be 5 Rainier. Dionjo hurriedly tried to stop him. Despite her words, her stomach rumbled loudly in protest. Lucas nodded. It's all right, it's all right. You don't have to say anything. I understand. The kebab vendor chuckled awkwardly. Oh, dear me, here you go. We also offer special services, you know. Walking down the street with 4 skewers of kebabs in hand, Dionjo complained, how am I supposed to finish all of these? This is so embarrassing. Beside her, Lucas also held a skewer. Hearing you react to the vendor earlier, I thought you could eat at least 10. Chewing thoughtfully, Dionjo replied, well, yes, but still. Lucas quickly finished his kebab. Suddenly, he leaned down and took a bite from the kebab in her hand. Dionjo cried out in surprise. Lucas licked his lips mischievously. There, I had some kebab too. Dionjo felt a little dizzy. If you wanted some, you could have just asked. Her words caused Lucas to fall silent for a moment. Duke, are you listening? Dionjo asked again. Just then, he burst out laughing. As they walked down the street, he said, I heard you. Then feed me a piece. I'm back to normal now. Dionjo grumbled. How is this normal? Lucas replied calmly. Between husband and wife, this is normal. Under the setting sun, they chatted amiably. Even so, we're in a contractual marriage. I bought these kebabs with my own money. Later that evening, they sat on a bench, the kebabs long gone. Did you have fun today? Lucas asked. Yes, I had a lot of fun, Dionjo replied. He beamed at her words. That's wonderful. It would have been a shame if only I had enjoyed myself. Her blue eyes looked up at the sky. What's there to regret? I even used your money, and it was the Duke who took me around. Lucas glanced at the woman beside him. Then next year's festival, will you repay me, my lady? They sat together, still maintaining a considerable distance. I prepared so much to keep you here, but I can't do anything. He gave a faint smile, as if expressing his helplessness. When you're more honest with me, I don't even know what to do. I forget all my plans. Lucas's face slowly flushed. Because she's paying attention to me, it makes me excited like a child. I like her. Could she truly come to like me more? Dionjo thought, hearing these unspoken words. But she clenched her fists, summoning all her courage. I have a reason to leave the capital. Lucas responded immediately, and Dionjo continued. I can't tell you the reason. Lucas agreed. I understand. Dionjo's voice dropped, her gaze falling as feelings of suffocation and doubt washed over her. When the person you love hides so many secrets, it's only natural to eventually feel disheartened. Pointing to herself, Deonjo turned to Lucas and asked, "Can you bear it if I can't tell you everything about me? Even if I can't be completely honest with you?" Lucas smiled. "Indeed, I feel a little regretful, but..." He turned and drew her close, embracing her. "I have no reason not to love you." His large hand gently caressed her face. In that moment, Deonjo thought, as long as I'm with this man, I don't care what happens. Meanwhile, Michael stood in the center of his room, a piece of paper clutched in his hand. A tremor of fear ran through the boy. "I completely forgot. That paper was the admission notice." Michael paced restlessly, unable to stop. "What should I do? What should I do? We're leaving the estate next week. Even if you manage to keep Deonjo here." The boy pictured her in his mind. "Michael, you made me stay, but then you left me." The mere thought was terrifying. In his imagination, Deonjo was packing her bags, preparing to leave. "You hurt me. I can't live with a liar like you anymore. Goodbye." "No, it can't be like this," Michael whispered in a panic. The boy clenched and unclenched his hands nervously. "Think of a way, Michael Montefiore. You can do it. You can make Deonjo stay here." Gripping the paper tightly, he declared with newfound resolve, "I have to prepare for this." The next morning, a carriage stopped in front of the estate. Suddenly, a scream erupted from within. "What?" Deonjo's eyes widened in horror. "Michael knows about the marriage contract too?" Turning, she saw Lucas and Michael acting as if nothing was amiss. "No, you have to discuss this with me. I made a promise. What if I refuse?" "You two liars." Lucas averted his gaze. "But this is a good thing, isn't it? Don't you feel the same way I do?" Deonjo immediately rebuked him. "Shameless." Michael, sweating profusely, interjected, "I was just following my uncle's orders." Lucas defended his nephew. "Admit it, you were the one who found the contract and stole it." Deonjo continued to glare at the boy. "What, stole it? Did you make us sleep together just to steal the contract?" Michael, feeling betrayed by his uncle, couldn't contain himself. "Uncle, that's truly shameless." Deonjo grabbed Lucas by the collar, confronting him. "You are the most despicable person ever. As an adult, you shouldn't scold the boy, yet you betrayed him. What were you thinking?" Lucas casually pulled her into his arms. "But thanks to this, we don't have to worry about that contract anymore. Aren't you actually happy?" Caught off guard, Deonjo's face paled. Unable to hold back any longer, she punched Lucas. "You bastard." That felt good. Lucas, stunned by the blow, stumbled back slightly. Michael, standing beside them, instinctively took a step back. Deonjo continued, "Do you think just that face can make me forgive everything? What do you take me for?" Suddenly, she turned to the boy beside her. "Michael, you won't steal things anymore, right?" Michael trembled as he answered, Yes, I'm sorry. I promise I won't do it again." Putting aside the fact that she'd been kept in the dark, Deonjo's curiosity piqued. "But Michael, how did you steal it?" She pondered for a moment. "Did you take it while I was washing my face? Because going to the room to get it wouldn't take much time." Michael hesitated. About that." Then brightening, he turned and said, "Let me show you this." Deonjo, puzzled, replied, They both looked at a piece of paper. Michael simply snapped his fingers, and the paper began to float, drifting slowly towards Deonjo. Before she could say anything, the writing on the paper began to shift and move. "If we do this," Michael explained, "we don't need to go back to the room." Deonjo watched, astonished, as the words on the paper in her hand flew away. "Oh, my goodness!" Deonjo exclaimed. "Michael, are you a wizard?" Goodness, the contract moved on its own, and the words just flew away. The boy turned away shyly. "I'm sorry for keeping it from you. Royal magic is top secret. Even the royal family doesn't know about my ability." Suddenly remembering something, he turned back to her. "Deonjo, you have to keep this a secret." She nodded. "Of course, but why keep Michael's ability a secret?" Lucas interrupted their conversation. "Let me explain." Michael sighed deeply in relief. I feel like I'm alive again." Lucas began slowly. "As you know, the ancestor of the royal family is the wolf god, Rufus." Just then, Michael shouted, "Hey, you're bleeding!" Despite the blood trickling from his nose, Lucas continued, "If Fidden was granted the title, he would become the hero of the empire, while the Montefiore family inherited the royal bloodline from the Basham family." Looking at Deonjo, Lucas continued, "Therefore, the Montefiores also inherited the royal bloodline." She handed him a handkerchief. "Here, wipe the blood, and then continue." Lucas took the handkerchief and slowly dabbed at his nose. Having inherited the blood of the wolf god Rufus, every man in the royal family has a special ability. My brother's ability is similar to Michael's, magic. We don't know what abilities the emperor or the crown prince have. Lucas continued to use Dionjo's handkerchief. Similarly, Michael and I don't reveal our abilities to them. His expression grew more serious. As potential contenders for the throne, the royal family sees us as a threat. Then, he suddenly burst out laughing. I thought the royal family would kill each other off, but keeping a trump card isn't a bad idea either. Dionjo looked at Lucas curiously. So, do you use magic too? Lucas glanced at her briefly. No, I don't use magic. She pressed further. Then what can you do? He swiftly wrapped an arm around her waist and tossed her into the air, startling both her and Michael. Dionjo landed back in his arms. I can do this with just a few fingers. He looked at her with immense tenderness. That's what I can do. Or perhaps it's because my lady is as light as a feather. Lucas chuckled. It's a remarkable ability, isn't it? How'd it feel to fly through the air? Quite reliable, right? Dionjo, slightly embarrassed, gave a nervous laugh. Haha. In the end, you still resort to those reliable punches and kicks. Michael stood there helplessly, arms crossed, still reeling from the earlier altercation. You still haven't learned your lesson. After venting her anger, Dionjo's voice softened. But sir, do you think this is all right? Avoiding his gaze, she continued. We aren't officially married yet, and I still have secrets I can't tell you. Her hands clenched together, as if gripped by fear. My emotions are also quite unstable. Lucas chuckled softly. My lady, such foolish words. He looked up, blood still faintly visible on his nose. Now, let's become a family. Before he could finish, Michael interrupted. Uncle, stop it. If you want to act cool, heal your injury first. Let me help you with magic. A moment later, the bleeding stopped. Lucas looked at Dionjo earnestly. I know what you've been afraid of. I also can't tell you what I'm afraid of. I'm too scared to say it. Her expression was serious. But I'm not asking you to reveal your secrets. His next words made Dionjo's heart bloom. I just want to tell you that we have the power to protect you, so don't worry anymore. You're the one who taught us what happiness is, and that fact will never change. Michael, standing beside them, watched their exchange of affection with unconcealed joy. Lucas took Dionjo's hand, bringing it towards his lips. I want to take this opportunity to sincerely ask you, my lady, will you become a part of our family? Lost in thought, she murmured, Mother, Father, turning back to the two men before her. A gentle smile graced her lips. I found a true family in this world. They smiled back, tender and relieved. You'll be happy again. Finally, Dionjo looked at Lucas, her eyes shining. Yes, I accept.